Chapter 2892. The blood spurted out by the sky-splitting spear instantly turned into spiritual energy. The sky-splitting spear didn't have a physical body, and the tool spirit was also a spiritual body. The blood was also composed of all kinds of pure vitality. Yi Shiwen had severely injured the sky-splitting spear in one blow. Of course, the sky-splitting spear wasn't prepared. However, the main reason was that Yi Shiwen had the strength to injure the doctrine tool. He might not be able to destroy the doctrine tool's body with his bare hands. However, he had a high chance of success if he dealt with the tool spirit. Yi Shiwen took a step forward and chased after the sky-splitting spear's tool spirit. He wanted to kill the sky-splitting spear's tool spirit in one blow. A Dao tool didn't have a tool spirit. Therefore, it would be impossible for it to display such power unless it fell into the hands of an emperor. Just like Yi Shiwen's time robe. It would be very difficult for it to display enough power to contend against other Dao tools if Yi Shiwen hadn't crazily stimulated it with endless emperor source. Yi Shiwen wasn't an emperor yet. He could only use this method to hurt the sky-splitting spear. Oh no, save the sky-splitting spear! After the initial shock, Great Freedom Heaven and the others instantly understood what Yi Shiwen wanted to do. He wanted to strike while the iron was hot and kill the sky-splitting spear's tool spirit in one blow. At this moment, they didn't have the time to wonder when Yi Shiwen had this ability. The Mahasvara, the Cold Moon Star Lord, and the Explosive Flame Evil King joined hands to launch an earth-shattering attack towards Yi Shiwen. At the same time, their big hands grabbed towards the direction of the sky-splitting spear. They wanted to retrieve the sky-splitting spear. The three of them could be said to be one of the strongest experts below the emperor. Especially Great Freedom Heaven, who was known as the strongest expert below the emperor. One could imagine how terrifying the power of this joint attack would be. The entire great array shook violently wherever it passed. All the space turned into chaos in an instant. Earth, fire, water, and wind condensed. All kinds of law fragments fluttered in the sky and mixed with each other. Endless energy appeared. It was like a magnificent army of thousands of men and horses that rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. Humph! Yi Shiwen immediately condensed a fist and blasted it to meet the attack of the three experts. Boom! The shocking collision occurred in an instant, but before the aftermath of the terrifying explosion could fully permeate, endless time force swept out and turned into a huge vortex that directly absorbed the attack. In an instant, it disappeared without a trace. The attacks of the three experts had also turned invisible with the help of the time robe. So, they couldn't really affect Yi Shiwen. The devil wings behind Yi Shiwen flapped unceasingly. In an instant, he flew over, penetrated through the space, and arrived above the sky-splitting spear in an instant. Then, he stomped on it. Boom! The sky-splitting spear let out a blood-curdling screech as it was trampled on by Yi Shiwen. Its body was certainly unscathed. However, its exposed tool spirit was trampled on its chest. Its entire body fell from the sky like a meteor, and fiercely crashed into the ground. Rumble. The aftermath of the series of explosions was still expanding at an astonishing speed. With the sky-splitting spear as the center, the land within a radius of 1,000 miles was instantly turned into powder, forming a huge crater. 1,000 miles away, there were also all sorts of densely packed cracks that spread in all directions like a spider web. The sky-splitting spear, which had already been seriously injured by Yi Shiwen, was now even more injured. However, an even more astonishing scene took place. Yi Shiwen suddenly stretched out his big hand, and directly grabbed towards the direction of the sky-splitting spear. Above his big hand, the endless power of time covered it. This power of time protected Yi Shiwen, and even allowed him to contend against the Dao tool. He wanted to directly suppress and subdue the sky-splitting spear. "You're courting death!" Great Freedom and the others suddenly roared in anger. In their opinion, Yi Shiwen was simply courting death. He actually dared to attack their Tao tool at this time. Go, kill him! Great Freedom took the lead and directly used the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand towards Yi Shiwen. After the series of attacks just now, they naturally understood that Yi Shiwen's strength was beyond doubt. It didn't matter how he had become so powerful. It was meaningless to talk about it now. At this time, they didn't dare to hold back even the slightest bit. At this time, they released all kinds of earth-shattering moves. The Dark Bodhi Divine Hand grew bigger and bigger under the support of countless dark and filthy powers. It formed an unimaginable power and slapped towards Yi Shiwen. Great Freedom's martial power was already extraordinary. Moreover, he was using an amazing divine tool like the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand. Even Yi Shiwen was very afraid of him. He immediately turned around and blasted the overturning the sky seal. Rumble! Yi Shiwen's overturning the sky seal reversed the power of the world, and fiercely collided with the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand. The astonishing waves set off by the explosion were still sweeping in an astonishing manner. However, this didn't affect Yi Shiwen's movements at all. All the attacks and the aftermath of the attacks directly rushed towards the time robe, and burst out bursts of tremors. His clothes made a fluttering sound, but he remained majestic and motionless. He was like an ancient sage. His expression wouldn't change, even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. Stop him! Don't let him succeed! The explosive inferno cruel king roared. He knew that Yi Shiwen couldn't subdue the sky splitter immediately even if he caught it. However, this was simply a humiliation for them. The three of them had joined hands, and Yi Shiwen had still succeeded in subduing it under their noses. It was simply unbearable. The explosive flame tyrannical king instantly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. All of his killing moves broke out in a split second, and an endless sea of flames burned directly towards Yi Shiwen. It was as if the sea and the sky were in a line, and the raging waves rushed towards Yi Shiwen. These flames could easily burn an incomparably powerful divine king alive. They had even affected his origin energy. They were simply unimaginably powerful and powerful. On the other side, the cold moon star monarch pinched a seal with both hands, and a monstrous magical power erupted from her body. In an instant, the sky brightened up. If one took a closer look, they would see that countless star projections had appeared in the Great Formation. They had penetrated through the layers of the Great Formation and appeared here. These stars were all the stars in the myriad realms. Under her summons, they had all projected their projections here. Then, the projections of these stars fell down one after another like meteors. They fell down fiercely in an astonishing manner. Countless starlight streaked across the sky and even covered the horizon like a violent storm. Every starlight was a huge divine kingdom. There were countless creatures' wills instilled in them. These countless starlight were countless divine kingdoms colliding with each other at all costs. One could imagine the degree of danger involved. It was simply unimaginably powerful. These two attacks could also be described as earth-shattering. They were both doing their best to stop Yi Shiwen. However, at this moment, Yi Shiwen roared, and the Avicii sword appeared in his hand. He waved out a shocking waterfall, which crossed the sky and instantly split the heaven and earth. Whether it was the explosive flame Evil King's attack or the cold moon star monarch's star kingdom, they were all annihilated in an instant. Wherever the sword radiance passed, these attacks were completely destroyed. However, Yi Shiwen was still not satisfied. He was still instilling more martial power into his body at an astonishing speed. The sword radiance rose against the wind and rushed up to the sky. In an instant, it pierced through the sky, and a huge hole appeared in the entire Great Formation. Boom! The shocking explosion was still reverberating in all directions at an astonishing speed. The entire sky was violently shaking and trembling. Now, while Yemo and the others were still immersed in such a shocking battle, and were trying their best to open up their divine kingdoms to protect themselves from the aftermath of the battle, Yi Shiwen's voice suddenly appeared in their minds. Then, a giant ship descended from the sky. It grew bigger and bigger, and appeared in front of them in an instant. It was the giant devil ship, but a part of it had already been refined by Yi Shiwen. Currently, most of the functions of the giant devil ship could not be used. In fact, it should be said that most of the functions were still in a state of being sealed by Yi Shiwen. In a state where he had not completely refined it, he did not dare to release it casually. Even so, some of the basic functions were already available. "Let's go." Yemo was the first to react. He remembered what Yi Shiwen had said to him before. He immediately leaped, and rushed to the giant devil ship with Yi Qianqian and the Hidden King. Then, the giant devil ship instantly moved, and directly submerged into the space. In the next flash, it had already appeared outside the Great Formation. This giant devil ship itself was the lair of the Devil Clan. It carried the Devil Clan through the endless void, and wandered in the heavens and the myriad realms. It was best at crossing the void and passing through all kinds of dangerous environment. The big hole that had been created by Yi Shiwen's slash was instantly repaired the moment the giant devil ship penetrated the Great Formation. The entire Great Formation had utilized some of the Emperor-level formations that had been arranged by the Emperor-level formations, so its recovery ability was unimaginable for other formations. There was only a split second of time, and it would be gone if they missed it. The experts of the celestial race who were outside the Great Formation saw this scene, and looked at each other in dismay. The sword had directly pierced through the Great Formation, and several experts of the celestial race hadn't been able to dodge in time. They had been vaporized by the blood-red sword light. However, the giant devil ship had already rushed out before they could recover from their confusion. What's going on? The experts of the celestial race were still in a daze when they saw Yemo shouting with a murderous aura, "Kill! Kill them all! Destroy the Great Formation from the outside!" Chapter 2893. Oh no, he has sent him out? Great Freedom's complexion changed as he said. The series of attacks had finally stopped Yi Shiwen from reaching for the sky-splitting spear. However, Yi Shiwen had successfully sent Yi Shiwen out. He believed that it would be very difficult to destroy the entire formation from the inside. After all, it was a part of the formation set up by the Emperor. However, it would be a different story if it was destroyed from the outside. It doesn't matter. We still have experts guarding outside. Don't worry. Cold Moon Star-Lord said calmly. It was impossible for the heavenly race to send so few people. There were still some experts outside. Although they were not as strong as the three of them, they were more than enough to deal with Yemo and the others. However, they obviously did not know that Yemo's current strength was not the same as before. Even the three of them might not be able to defeat him, let alone the quasi-emperor experts who were far inferior to him. No matter what, we must kill this boy first. We can't delay any longer, Great Freedom said. He was still worried about the situation outside. Moreover, the situation just now had completely enraged him. He could not wait to cut Yi Shiwen into pieces. Kill him. We must kill him. The sky-splitting spear roared. His voice was hoarse. Blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth. The blood turned into brilliance and dissipated. The series of attacks just now was so fast and powerful that he felt his whole body trembling. Yi Shiwen's punch had almost shattered his spirit body. It was the first time that he realized how fragile his body was. Although he was a spirit body, it was a Dao Tool spirit body. How could it be the same as an ordinary spirit body? Even a dragon quasi-emperor of the same level might not be as tyrannical as him. However, he was completely vulnerable in front of Yi Shiwen. He felt that he had been too careless. He had used his body to take Yi Shiwen's attack head-on. As a result, he had been seriously injured. He had never been injured to this extent. He was used to living like a prince. He could not wait to cut Yi Shiwen into pieces and let him die without a burial place. Yi Shiwen, it is useless even if you send him out today. It is impossible to destroy the formation. You should give up. Great Freedom said coldly. Destroy the formation? You're thinking too much. I've never thought of destroying the array formation. Even if the array formation interferes with me, it doesn't matter to me. Yi Shiwen faintly smiled. He naturally had absolute confidence in himself. He had even slain the primordial spirit of an imperial emperor, let alone these people. He had sent them out because he was worried about Yi Qianqian. If the Hidden King were to be affected by the shockwaves of the battle, he would be used by the other party as a weakness. What? How arrogant! The explosive flame savage king instantly became furious. His eyes had already turned red. He had already formed a personal grudge with Yi Shiwen this time. So, he must kill Yi Shiwen. Otherwise, there would be endless troubles in the future. Yi Shiwen had become so terrifying in such a short time. Wu Fa was imagining how terrifying he would become if he was given more time. No matter what, you won't escape death today. The great Freedom Angel grabbed out with the dark Bodhi's sacred hand. The hand grew bigger and bigger as the wind blew. It was as if the entire world had been slapped down. The great Freedom Angel blew out a mouthful of essence chi. Suddenly, the whole world began to spin. It came crashing down. The cold moon star monarch directly pinched a seal. Countless stars with star kingdoms came crashing down. They were no longer illusory. In every holy kingdom, there were countless creatures manifesting. There were deities chanting the Divine Heart Sutra. The power was even more shocking. The explosive flame savage king also turned into countless flaming men in an instant. They formed an army and rushed towards Yi Shiwen in a mighty manner. These flaming men were not ordinary. They were formed by the fusion of his martial will and energy. Each of them could kill a divine king. They were very terrifying. The three of them joined forces and broke out an earth-shattering attack. All of them marched towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen stood in the void. His eyes were cold as he looked at them. He did not move. At this moment it was as if the whole world had frozen. At this moment the scene was fixed. Time was a moment, an eternity. Behind Yi Shiwen, the demon wings stretched out. They were like clouds hanging in the sky. They were incomparably huge and instantly protected him. Countless power of time formed a huge holy kingdom with Yi Shiwen as the center. It rolled out in all directions. Buzz! All the attacks rushed in and sank into the holy kingdom of time. However, in an instant, all the attacks were completely annihilated. It should be said that they were completely engulfed. All the martial arts and magic were annihilated. They were buried. All the attacks were disintegrated. The attacks were still bombarding in continuously. However, they could do nothing to Yi Shiwen. He took a step forward. One of his hands blasted out the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. It formed a 6 paths wheel and blasted out. The other hand blasted out the overturning sky seal. These two frightening attacks charged towards the descending dark Bodhi sacred palm. Rumble! An astonishing collision unfolded in an instant. That terrifying power swept out in all directions with monstrous magic power and energy. All of a sudden, his offensive was stagnated. Even the power of the great freedom sky and the dark Bodhi sacred hand could not do anything to Yi Shiwen. However, in this moment of stagnation, Yi Shiwen's demon wings had already been unleashed to the limit. He instantly rushed in front of the explosive flame ruthless king. The Avicii sword appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand. In an instant an astonishing power erupted. It soared into the sky, pierced through the vault of heaven, and split the vault of heaven into 2 halves. The aura of the Avicii sword was everywhere as it ruthlessly fell down. All of the flame men in front of the explosive flame tyrant king seemed to have felt some kind of terrifying pressure and collapsed on the spot. Even he could feel the aura of death coming towards him. Ever since he had proven his Tao, this kind of feeling had disappeared. No one could threaten his life anymore. But now, he actually felt the same feeling again. It was as if he would die in the next second. His eyes were bloodshot. He felt that he had been forced into a dead-end fight. The explosive flame ruthless king roared. His hands gathered into a kingdom of flames on the spot. He displayed the terrifying strength of a peak quasi-emperor. The divine kingdom of flames instantly expanded and formed a fire character. It pounced towards Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen did not stop. He held the sword of Avicii in his hand and slashed down. Boom! The collision between the two erupted with an earth-shattering light. It was eternal. It made people feel as if time was about to stop at this moment. However, this feeling only lasted for a moment. This image that seemed to last for eternity completely collapsed. Yi Shiwen's sword of Avicii completely destroyed the explosive flame ruthless king's divine kingdom of flames. It instantly cut through his divine kingdom of flames. Then, it directly slashed towards the explosive flame ruthless king. Pucci! The explosive flame ruthless king screamed in pain. His whole body was instantly cut in half. Countless laws erupted from both sides of his body. The laws shot out and connected the two halves of his body. He wanted to reassemble them. However, how could Yi Shiwen give him another chance? He suddenly slashed down with his sword. The two halves of the explosive flame ruthless king's body that had yet to reassemble were cut open again. His body exploded with a loud bang. Blood splattered and bone fragments flew everywhere. It was as if the explosive flame ruthless king had been slashed into meat paste. The meat paste wriggled and wanted to continue to escape. It wanted to reassemble its body. However, how could Yi Shiwen give him such a chance? He slashed the meat paste again. Then, he pasted another seal character on it. Then, he directly grabbed it into the time robe and completely suppressed it with the power of time. Time was too tight. All of this happened in a flash. Although it seemed like a long time, it actually happened in an instant. The explosive flame ruthless king was severely injured in an instant. However, Cold Moon Star Lord and Freedom Heaven's attacks had already arrived. They did not allow Yi Shiwen to kill the explosive flame ruthless king first. Yi Shiwen simply sealed the explosive flame ruthless king first. It would soon be completely absorbed by the time robe. Rumble! A series of loud explosions were heard. Cold Moon Star Lord and Freedom Heaven's attacks had bombarded Yi Shiwen's divine kingdom of time. Yi Shiwen's divine kingdom of time shook violently. Especially the dark Bodhi divine hand. It almost broke his divine kingdom of time. It had clawed through his defensive domain and grabbed Yi Shiwen's body. Not good. How come even the explosive flame ruthless king has been sealed? Both of them reacted very quickly. In fact, they had reacted almost as soon as Yi Shiwen attacked the explosive flame fierce king. However, they were still a bit too slow. The explosive flame fierce king had already suffered a tragic accident in such a short time. It had been severely injured by Yi Shiwen and then sealed. It doesn't matter. The explosive flame ruthless king's martial power is profound. How can it be completely refined so easily? Yi Shiwen will have to consume a lot of martial power to suppress the explosive flame ruthless king. This is our opportunity. Let's take advantage of this opportunity to kill him. Freedom Heaven took the lead and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Then, he grabbed Yi Shiwen. Bang! Freedom Heaven's dark Bodhi divine hand grabbed Yi Shiwen's body. However, it only left a faint mark on Yi Shiwen's body. It couldn't break through Yi Shiwen's defense. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Yi Shiwen turned around and bombarded with a punch. The powerful fist vibrated and formed a terrifying shockwave. The punch landed on Freedom Heaven's body. Puff! Freedom Heaven was caught off guard and got hit. He spouted a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Chapter 2894. If the dark Bodhi divine hand had not blocked most of the attacks, he would have been pierced by Yi Shiwen's punch. Damn it! How could this be? Great freedom celestial roared again and again. It was different from what he had expected. Suppressing the explosive flame tyrannical king did not consume much of Yi Shiwen's power. He estimated it based on his own situation. If it were him, he would definitely need to consume a lot of power and energy. However, Yi Shiwen's power was much stronger than his. Moreover, he had the help of the robe of time. It only took a moment for him to suppress the explosive flame tyrannical king. Yi Shiwen was about to rush out and severely injure Great Freedom Celestial. On the other side, Cold Moon Star Lord had already rushed over. Or rather, she was too hasty to stop. She rushed over directly. All of her attacks fell on Yi Shiwen. However, she could not even break the robe of time that Yi Shiwen was wearing. Bang! The moment when all the attacks touched the robe of time, they all turned into brilliant lights and swept in all directions. The star kingdoms that were crashing down from the sky directly collapsed and melted around Yi Shiwen. How could he be so strong? Cold Moon Star Lord suddenly felt a chill. For the first time, her delicate face showed fear. For the first time, a feeling of despair rose up in her. Facing such a monster that she could not break his defense at all. On the contrary, Yi Shiwen could seriously injure her with one blow. How could she not feel a sense of despair? This feeling was like facing the legendary emperor. No, the emperor was even more terrifying. He could kill her with one slap. However, at this moment, it did not make any difference to her. Sure enough, Yi Shiwen just turned around and punched. Boom! The terrifying power of the fist brought with it a surge of primal chi. It enveloped the entire world and instantly landed on Frigid Moon Star Lord. Bang! There was a loud roar, but Yi Shiwen's fist power did not pierce through Cold Moon Star Lord. At the critical moment, the Sky Splitter Spear crossed the sky and smashed Yi Shiwen's attack into pieces. The mystical spear suddenly appeared in front of Yi Shiwen and Cold Moon Star Lord. Cold Moon Star Lord, I'll leave the rest to you. I was seriously injured by Yi Shiwen. I need to recover first. Help me hold him back. After the spirit of the Sky Splitter finished speaking, the spear flew into Cold Moon Star Lord's hand. Suddenly, Cold Moon Star Lord's aura soared. She was like a deity that had appeared again. Endless spear light burst out of the Sky Splitter and scattered in the world. The Frigid Moon Star Lord's eyes turned cold. Her face was covered in frost. With the Tao item in hand, her strength had increased significantly and her confidence had multiplied. Yi Shiwen, today is the day you die. Cold Moon Star Lord said coldly, holding the Sky Splitter and pointing it at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't feel the slightest bit depressed even though his attack failed. He just sneered and said, "You are my defeated opponent, and he is my defeated opponent. Two defeated opponents joining hands. Don't tell me you want to go against the heaven?" Yi Shiwen was not moved at all in the face of such a shocking combination. Yi Shiwen would have been forced to retreat if he had encountered such a combination before he had obtained the Devil King's help. He would have been able to protect himself at most. However, this wasn't a problem for him now. After all, how could they be more powerful than the combination of the three lords of the underworld, the soul of the underworld emperor, and the giant devil ship? After experiencing such a battle, this was just a small matter to him. It was not a big deal at all. Yi Shiwen, don't be too arrogant. If you know what's good for you, let go of the explosive flame Savage King. Otherwise, you will die without a burial place. Cold Moon Star Lord said coldly. With the Sky Splitter, her confidence was greatly boosted. With the ability to hurt Yi Shiwen, she did not believe that Yi Shiwen could be so strong alone. Die without a burial place? I want to see just who will make who die without a burial ground. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. He did not care at all. He took a big step forward and rushed to the front of Cold Moon Star Lord. Cold Moon Star Lord roared and rushed forward. The sky-splitting spear in her hand burst with endless cold light. Spear radiance kept bursting out. Every spear radiance could pierce through the world, and make the world return to its chaotic state. Earth, fire, water, and wind could be practiced again. Cold Moon Star-Lord shouted. Bang! 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 A fierce battle broke out between the two sides. In order to buy time for the weapon spirit of the sky-splitting spear to recover, and also to buy time for Freedom Heaven to recover, Cold Moon Star-Lord was doing her best. She was burning her mana everywhere. Although doing so would hurt her foundation and would undoubtedly be a huge hindrance to her future cultivation, she had no other choice at this moment. She realized that the man in front of her was not someone that any of them could defeat alone. If she let him attack them one by one, all of them would die today. She had no choice but to fight desperately. However, Yi Shiwen wouldn't give them any chance to breathe. His powerful attacks were breaking out every second. However, Yi Shiwen couldn't get rid of the Great Freedom Heaven for a while because Cold Moon Star-Lord was holding him back with all her might. Furthermore, the entire formation was attacking Shao Chen continuously. When the formations that the sovereign emperors laid down were unleashed, they still posed some threat to Shao Chen. He could not ignore them completely. Get out of my way! Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch, and directly bombarded the sky-splitting spear. Buzz! The sky-splitter spear rumbled like a huge bell and shook violently. Frigid Moon Star-Lord felt a monstrous power wreaking havoc in her palm. Even though the sky-splitter spear was desperately trying to reduce the impact of this power, the remaining power was still terrifying. Bang! Finally, her entire palm could not stand it anymore. It exploded on the spot and turned into a bloody mist. In the eyes of others, Yi Shiwen's strength was truly astonishing. Free strike! Suddenly, the sun, the moon, and the stars around him seemed to be rotating. It seemed as if a force was controlling the universe, rotating the sun and moon. A huge finger fell from the sky and pointed straight at Yi Shiwen's glabella. It seemed as if it wanted to explode him in one breath. It was at this critical juncture that Mahasvara made his move. The power of this attack from the dark Bodhi sacred hand was truly astonishing. Sky's severing finger! Yi Shiwen spat out these words. He then pointed his finger. It seemed as if the entire sky had darkened under this finger. The world and the universe had shrunk, and formed a small origin point with his finger as the center. The two fingers collided fiercely. Then, Mahasvara let out a scream of agony as he was sent flying backward like a meteor. A terrifying power flowed through his fingers and into his body, causing it to explode and wreak havoc. He was seriously injured in an instant. This was the Severing Heaven's finger that Yi Shiwen had practiced in the past. The original Severing Heaven's finger naturally didn't have such great power. The Severing Heaven's finger could only intercept a part of the power of heaven for his own use. However, Yi Shiwen could intercept the power of a small world for his own use now. With his current martial Dao cultivation, he could raise the power of the heavenly severing finger to an earth-shattering level in a matter of minutes. This was the principle of understanding one theory, then understanding 100 theories. At this time, Yi Shiwen did not continue to chase Freedom Heaven. Instead, he went after Cold Moon Star-Lord, who had just been seriously injured and was running away. He was like a demon god in chaos. Countless terrifying attacks from the spirit designs landed on his body, bursting with dazzling light. However, in reality, they couldn't even break through his basic defense. He caught up with Cold Moon Star-Lord in one step and stuck close to her like a shadow. The sky-flipping seal suddenly fell. Bang! Yi Shiwen's sky-flipping seal fell on Cold Moon Star-Lord's body. Cold Moon Star-Lord felt as if the power of countless worlds exploded in her body. She was seriously injured in an instant. Boom! Then, Cold Moon Star-Lord seemed to have been hit by a bomb. Her body exploded on the spot and turned into a cloud of blood mist. Then, she tried to recover in the distance. Even the sky-severing spear could not catch up. She could only watch Yi Shiwen seriously injure Cold Moon Star-Lord. The figure of the cold moon star lord reappeared in the distance. This time, she no longer had the confidence to attack. Even with the help of the sky-splitting spear, Yi Shiwen was also wearing the time robe. The two sides had completely cancelled each other out. At this time, the gap between her and Yi Shiwen's skills was completely revealed. Her eyes flashed with an unimaginable expression. She did not understand why Yi Shiwen, who was not even at the peak of the Emperor-to-be level, could have such terrifying combat power. However, at the moment when she was in a daze of fear, Yi Shiwen had already stepped on the ground and chased after her. In an instant, the spiritual energy between the heavens and the earth surged, as if the heavens and the earth were turning upside down. Yi Shiwen's hands almost instantly cut open the space, and chased after her in an instant. Yi Shiwen's speed was so fast that he almost instantly caught up to her side. The overturning the sky seal directly smashed down. The might of the sky-flipping seal seemed to have mobilized all the laws in the world. It turned into a dense net that enveloped Cold Moon Star Lord. Cold Moon Star Lord screamed in pain and was smashed into pieces again. Her body turned into a bloody mist and dissipated in the air. She still wanted to reform, but Yi Shiwen would not give her the chance. He waved the demon summoning banner and swallowed her. He sealed her with the word seal and turned her into food for the demon summoning banner. Immediately, many demon kings began to transform after swallowing the flesh of the peak Emperor-to-be. Demon kings of the Emperor-to-be level appeared in the demon summoning banner. It was another huge transformation. Chapter 2895. This was the first time that a demon king had transformed into a quasi-emperor from the demon flag. Yi Shiwen had fed several quasi-emperors with their blood essences in the past, but none of them had produced quasi-emperors. At most, they had produced a few peak divine kings. But now, it seemed that the quantitative change had caused a qualitative change. There had been no change before. But now, there had suddenly been a qualitative change. The so-called quantitative change had caused a qualitative change. They had absorbed so many quasi-emperors' blood essences in addition to their high level. Only then could they have a smooth breakthrough. The help of a quasi-emperor demon king to Yi Shiwen and a divine king demon king to Yi Shiwen couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. The transformation was still going on. Moreover, there was more than one demon king undergoing transformation. All of these would increase Yi Shiwen's foundation and strength. Yi Shiwen didn't have time to think. He directly grabbed the sky-splitting spear. Yi Shiwen! An angry roar was heard. An attack fell from the sky and blocked Yi Shiwen and the sky-splitting spear. Yi Shiwen's efforts were in vain. The sky-splitting spear immediately turned into a streamer and flew into Great Freedom's hand. Great Freedom's strength had skyrocketed with 2 Dao tools in hand. His aura had also increased crazily. You're the last one left. Let's get rid of you together. Yi Shiwen coldly looked at Great Freedom. Once upon a time, Great Freedom had posed a great threat to Yi Shiwen. Even his spirit incarnation had made him feel a great danger. But now, he wasn't a match for Yi Shiwen at all. He had defeated 3 of them. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but sigh. The world was ever-changing. He wouldn't have believed it if he hadn't experienced it himself. Yi Shiwen, you're good. Great Freedom looked at Yi Shiwen with an extremely cold expression. You guys weren't a match for me even when you joined hands. Now, you want to overturn the heavens by yourself? Yi Shiwen sneered. It's time to settle the grievances between us. You must have never thought that such a day would come when you tried to kill me. Yes, I never thought about it. I never thought about it, Great Freedom said coldly. Even if you beat me to death, I never thought that you would be able to grow to this extent in such a short period of time and become a great calamity for my Tian clan. If I had known earlier, I would have killed you no matter what price I had to pay. Back then, Yi Shiwen's strength was nothing in his eyes. Yi Shiwen was just a slightly threatening junior, nothing more. At that time, He didn't realize that Yi Shiwen could grow to this extent in such a short period of time. It was simply unimaginable. If there was medicine for regret, he would definitely kill the other party, no matter what price he had to pay. Unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. You knew it would be like this? Yi Shiwen coldly snorted. Even he himself hadn't thought that he could reach this step in such a short time. Unrestrained heaven's aura became stronger and stronger, and his body became clearer and clearer. He was like a volcano that was about to erupt. He opened his eyes, and they seemed eternal and undying. The addition of the 2 Dao tools had increased his strength to an unprecedented level. His strength had almost reached the peak, the limit that a quasi-emperor could reach. Under normal circumstances, there was absolutely no method that could allow him to improve further. However, this Dao tool was an exception. Just by holding the Dao tool in his hand, the power that he could unleash would increase by several times. If Yi Shiwen hadn't also had the Dao tools, he would have killed ordinary peak quasi-emperors. However, it's not too late to kill you now. I will make up for what I didn't do before. I will kill you today no matter what price I have to pay. Great Freedom said coldly. The threat that Yi Shiwen had given him made him feel an unprecedented pressure. He was determined not to let Yi Shiwen continue to grow. Otherwise, what would happen to him? It doesn't matter what price you pay. Not only will you die now, but even the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand and the Sky Splitter Spear will fall into my hands, Yi Shiwen said. Especially the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand. It was something he wanted very much. With the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand in hand, the power of his 6 paths of reincarnation fist would be many times stronger. He was even confident that he could threaten the legendary Emperor. This was the great power that could be unleashed from a Dao item. In the hands of Great Freedom, it was simply a waste of God's gift. Yi Shiwen instantly attacked. He didn't want to talk nonsense with Great Freedom. He clenched the 6 paths of reincarnation fist and slammed it down with a loud bang. You still want to use this kind of power to suppress me? Great Freedom roared. His whole body seemed to have undergone a shocking change. He directly grabbed the Sky Splitter Spear with the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand, and then pierced the sky with the spear. Although Great Freedom hadn't practiced spear techniques before, he could still create an earth-shattering spear technique in a matter of minutes for an expert who had cultivated to the level of Great Freedom. Now that he had the power of 2 Dao tools, the power of his spear had suddenly increased by many levels. Boom! An earth-shattering collision sound was heard as both sides collided. Smoke filled the air, and the momentum of an army that could devour the mountains and rivers exploded in an instant. Countless mushroom clouds quickly rose around the two of them. Each of the mushroom clouds was as huge as an ancient divine mountain. The moment both sides collided, atoms were annihilated, and terrifying energy surged. Yi Shiwen remained motionless in this collision. However, Mahasvara was forced to retreat several steps. A trace of blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. There was a look of utter disbelief in his eyes. He was holding 2 Dao tools in his hands, and yet he was still in a disadvantageous position against Yi Shiwen. How is this possible? I have 2 Dao tools in my hands, and you only have the time robe at your disposal. How can you be stronger than me? He could clearly feel that Yi Shiwen had indeed only used the power of the time robe, and not the Avicii sword. Even so, his 2 Dao tools couldn't even compare to Yi Shiwen's 1 Dao tool. How could this be possible? There was indeed a gap between Dao tools, but it was absolutely impossible for the gap to be this big. At this moment, he truly felt Yi Shiwen's formidable strength. Yi Shiwen was practically invincible. Yi Shiwen had single-handedly defeated 3 peak quasi-emperors, and even defeated him, the number 1 expert in the world. This was tantamount to the collapse of a legend. He still didn't know that Yi Shiwen had also defeated the spirit of Ming Di. Otherwise, he would have been even more shocked. This kind of power had already far surpassed him. Yi Shiwen had single-handedly achieved something that he didn't even dare to imagine. What's so strange about this? Whether it's the sky-splitting spear or the dark Bodhi divine hand, none of them belong to you. How much strength can you use? How can it compare to my refining of the time robe? Yi Shiwen sneered and said, moreover, most importantly, don't you understand? Right now, your strength is far inferior to mine. This is a qualitative change. Impossible. You haven't even reached the peak of the quasi-emperor level. How can you be so powerful? Great Freedom's eyes were bloodshot. This had completely subverted his worldview, and completely exceeded his expectations. In his worldview, it was impossible for such an abnormal existence to exist. Just because you can't do it doesn't mean that I can't. Obediently hand over the 2 Tao tools, Yi Shiwen said. I'll fight you to the death. Great Freedom roared again and again, even if I have to die, I will let you die with me. I regret it now. Why didn't I kill you earlier? Why have you become such a big problem now? Boundless power burst out of Mahasvara's body, and in an instant, a huge wheel of light appeared behind him. However, Yi Shiwen's overturning the heavens seal also fell at this time. He condensed the world power in it, and it instantly rushed down. The light wheel behind Great Freedom was crushed in an instant. All of his attacks turned into nothingness. There was no way for him to resist Yi Shiwen. Bang! Great Freedom screamed and was sent flying on the spot. He was no longer a match for Yi Shiwen at this time. After all, Yi Shiwen had obtained the inheritance of the Devil King. It wasn't as simple as just a little bit of power. Instead, it was a comprehension that many people couldn't even imagine. Yi Shiwen could use the same bit of power several times. This was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Therefore, even a little bit of advantage could turn into an unparalleled advantage for Yi Shiwen. This was something that Great Freedom couldn't achieve. In fact, he couldn't even imagine it. Yi Shiwen chased after Great Freedom. The Avicii sword emerged, and pierced through the blue dome of heaven. It fiercely slashed at Great Freedom's body. Tao tools had a certain degree of defensive capabilities. However, there was still a huge gap between them and a specialized defensive tool like the time robe. Moreover, the power of the Avicii sword was terrifying. It directly smashed the defense of the sky-splitting spear and the dark Bodhi divine hand, and directly chopped Great Freedom's body into 2 halves. Yi Shiwen thought that Great Freedom Heaven would reconstruct his body. However, he suddenly saw Great Freedom Heaven fleeing towards the void with the other half of his body. He tore a scroll with 1 half of his body. A huge space portal appeared in front of him. Then, half of Great Freedom's body passed through it. Ha 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 ha, Yi Shiwen, you won't get 2 Tao tools even if I die. On the other half of his body, Great Freedom had a desolate and crazy smile on his face. He was staring at Yi Shiwen. You want to leave? Don't even think about it. Yi Shiwen chased after it. However, the other half of Great Freedom's body had already grown out. Then, it rushed towards Yi Shiwen to attack him. Chapter 2896. Mahasvara seemed to have gone crazy at this time. He grabbed Yi Shiwen crazily, not letting him escape. His whole body was burning with spiritual power. It seemed as if the world was falling. The world was mourning. A top expert had fallen. His death had even caused the world to resonate. It was an apocalyptic scene everywhere. It was extremely terrifying. Get lost. Yi Shiwen instantly understood what Mahasvara was thinking. He clearly wanted to stall Yi Shiwen so that the Sky Splitter could escape. He himself was desperately trying to stall Yi Shiwen so that the Sky Splitter would have enough time to escape. Moreover, he left the dark Bodhi divine hand behind to stall Yi Shiwen. If he didn't have the dark Bodhi divine hand, he wouldn't be able to stop Yi Shiwen. He would be torn apart in an instant. Neither the Sky Splitter nor the dark Bodhi divine hand would be able to escape. At this time, he didn't have any thoughts of killing Yi Shiwen. He just wanted to let one of them escape. Yi Shiwen could even guess what he was thinking. The dark Bodhi divine hand didn't have a tool spirit. In terms of value, it was inferior to the Sky Splitter, which had a tool spirit. It could still erupt with amazing combat power without the help of an emperor. He had made his choice almost instantaneously. It was no wonder that Mahasvara was a top-notch expert who had been the #1 expert in the world for such a long time. He was definitely an ambitious and decisive person. Even when he was forced into a corner, he still made the most appropriate choice. If it were Yi Shiwen, he would probably make the same choice. However, Yi Shiwen wouldn't let himself be forced to make such a choice. However, since Yi Shiwen had already understood, he couldn't let the other party have his way. Yi Shiwen pointed his finger. In an instant, the whole world seemed to rotate with his fingertip as the center. It condensed and erupted with the power of a world in an instant. Bang! Freedom Celestial screamed as he was sent flying. His entire body exploded in an instant. Even with the help of the dark Bodhi divine hand, his strength had dropped by a lot since he didn't have more than half of his body. He couldn't use the true power of the dark Bodhi divine hand. He was sent flying by Yi Shiwen's attack. The dark Bodhi sacred hands ended up in such a state in your hands. What a waste of heavenly gifts! Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. He saw that the great freedom heavens had reformed his body, and was rushing towards him. So, he didn't chase after the splitting sky spear. Instead, he rushed towards the great freedom heavens. The Avicii sword suddenly appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand. It chopped out an earth-shattering blood-red sword light. It seemed as if an ancient mountain range had pierced through the stars, and hacked down. Pucci! Mahasvara used his sacred dark Bodhi hand to block the attack, but it was not enough. Although he managed to block most of the sword of Avicii's swordlight, he was still sent flying. His fleshly body exploded in mid-air, turning into a bloody mist. At this moment, Yi Shiwen reacted quickly, and grabbed the dark Bodhi divine hand. The moment Yi Shiwen tried to grab the dark Bodhi sacred hand, a huge figure suddenly emerged from the dark Bodhi sacred hand. A wisp of divine sense was faintly left behind, and it burst forth. It was Holy Lord Bodhi. At this critical moment, the last bit of Holy Lord Bodhi's spirit had burst forth in an attempt to stop Yi Shiwen. Audacious mortal, how dare you desecrate my relic? So, you're the one who's helping Mahasvara from behind. I was wondering why Mahasvara was able to use the dark Bodhi divine hand so freely in such a short period of time. So, you're the one who's secretly helping me. A sneer appeared on Yi Shiwen's face. The remnant soul of an Emperor Lord was indeed a great threat to others. However, it was nothing to him. Not to mention the fact that it was dead, even if it was alive, he had already killed it. However, this was just the right time. If he wanted to control the dark Bodhi divine hand under normal circumstances, he would have to spend a lot of time to find and refine this wisp of spirit that was secretly causing trouble. So, he could kill this wisp of spirit right now. It would save him a lot of time. Yi Shiwen chopped out with his sword and roared, "Buried sword art!" Countless sword lights swept across the sky, and turned into a huge long stream. It converged into a river, and condensed into a river. It was like rivers flowing into the sea. Then, it fiercely chopped towards Holy Lord Bodhi's spirit. Pucci! Holy Lord Bodhi roared, "How dare you!" However, it was useless. The sword light in Yi Shiwen's hand did not have the slightest emotion or fear. It directly pierced through him. Although the spirit of an Emperor Lord was also very terrifying, and ordinary quasi-emperors might not be able to hurt them, Yi Shiwen had the Avicii sword in his hand. It only took one sword strike to pierce through him, and he instantly turned into ashes. Holy Lord Bodhi's immortal spirit was burned by the blood-red sword chi of the Avicii sword, and it screamed as it turned into nothingness. The entire scene was extremely fast. Yi Shiwen had no intention of showing mercy at all. Grab it! Yi Shiwen's big hand suddenly grabbed towards the dark Bodhi divine hand. Without the remnant spirit of Holy Lord Bodhi causing trouble, the resistance of the dark Bodhi divine hand was obviously reduced a lot. It was instantly grabbed by Yi Shiwen and sucked into his time robe. It was naturally not that easy to refine the Tao tool in a short time. However, he could seal it first and slowly refine it later. All of this took a long time to describe, but it actually happened in an instant. At this time, the great unrestrained heavenly genius had just reconstructed his physical body. After losing half of his physical body, the strength of the great unrestrained heavenly genius had decreased by more than half. It was completely different from before. After Yi Shiwen had sucked the dark Bodhi divine hand into his time robe, he seemed to have finally reacted. If both sides of his body were present, there might be a slight possibility of fighting against Yi Shiwen. Now, he could only use his own life to stop Yi Shiwen's footstep. Puchi! Yi Shiwen's sword slashed down. The great unrestrained heavenly genius had just reconstructed his physical body, and was immediately slashed by the Avicii sword. His flesh and blood exploded, and waves of blood-curdling screams came from the void. His spirit was being burned by the blood-red sword chi of the Avicii sword. It was exactly the same as the situation of Holy Lord Bodhi. However, in comparison, even the spirit of an Emperor Lord couldn't do anything against the blood-red sword chi of the Avicii sword. Let alone a half-crippled quasi-emperor. After destroying the great unrestrained heavenly genius's spirit, Yi Shiwen instantly sucked the flesh and blood of the great unrestrained heavenly genius into the demon flag. Suddenly, a rain of blood fell from the demon flag, and countless demon kings transformed into their original forms. They opened their mouths wide, and began to crazily fight over the flesh and blood. This was the flesh and blood of a peak quasi-emperor. In this world, it was almost as precious as the divine materials used to cast Tao tools. It was extremely rare. Suddenly, several demon kings who were in the state of peak divine king began to undergo an astonishing transformation. After killing the great unrestrained heavenly genius, Yi Shiwen instantly chased after the sky-splitting spear and the other half of the great unrestrained heavenly genius. However, more than half of the great unrestrained heavenly genius's spirit had been killed by Yi Shiwen, and the remaining half of his body was only left with a remnant soul. Even if he were to let him go, it wouldn't affect the overall situation. More than half of the great unrestrained heavenly genius's spirit had been killed by Yi Shiwen. So, it would be impossible for him to return to his current realm for the rest of his life. In fact, it would be a huge problem whether he could maintain his quasi-emperor realm or not. When going to the opposite shore of cultivation, the body was the ship, and the spirit was the person on the ship. It was only possible to cross the boundless sea of bitterness and reach the opposite shore when both of them were intact. However, the great unrestrained heavenly boat had been damaged, and he had also suffered serious losses. So, any wind and rain could overturn him. Therefore, if the great unrestrained heavenly genius was smart, he would choose not to try to restore his strength. Otherwise, the obstacles set by the heavenly law would make him die without a burial place. However, what Yi Shiwen really cared about was the sky-splitting spear. He couldn't let this Tao tool escape. It had been some time since the sky-splitting spear had torn open a space channel. The crack was getting smaller and smaller, and the other half of the great unrestrained heavenly genius's body and the sky-splitting spear were nowhere to be seen. Yi Shiwen immediately took a step forward and chased after them. He rushed into the crack before it was completely closed. "Fix it for me!" Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. Bursts of 7-colored rays of light erupted from the time robe, and fixed the space that seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. He wanted to preserve this passage so that he could come back when the time came. After that, he hurriedly chased after the great unrestrained heavenly genius. He didn't know where this passage was, but he didn't care. He was in the myriad heavens now. Unless he directly encountered an emperor, he didn't have anything to fear. Moreover, he had left a passage behind. He could retreat if something went wrong. Yi Shiwen had just passed through the passage when he suddenly felt a majestic morale rushing towards him. It seemed to have formed a consciousness, and madly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen immediately realized that this was a huge military camp. This kind of terrifying morale couldn't be released by an ordinary army. Only the gathering of tens of millions of invincible experts could form such a terrifying morale. The time robe on Yi Shiwen's body immediately reacted the moment he came into contact with this morale. He directly displayed the time divine kingdom, and completely blocked and annihilated the morale. This prevented Yi Shiwen from being captured and crushed by this morale. Even so, Yi Shiwen's face still revealed a somewhat shocked expression. No wonder people say that 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Such a terrifying morale could actually threaten a peak quasi-emperor like him, who stood at the top of the myriad heavens. An ordinary quasi-emperor like the Hidden King would have suffered a huge blow to the morale the moment he rushed over. Yi Shiwen only had time to observe his surroundings after he swept away the morale that was rushing towards him. He suddenly revealed a somewhat stunned expression. Chapter 2897. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but be stunned after checking the surrounding situation. This place wasn't any other place. It was the base camp of the Celestial Race and the Allied forces. The Celestial Race's base camp was located here in order to compete with the Allied forces. At the same time, they also wanted to delay the Allied forces. This place had become the most intense place for both sides to fight. Not only were the elites of both sides here, but more than half of the experts of both sides were also here. Other battlefields might not have seen experts of the level of Great Freedom Celestial. However, there were many experts of this level here. This had also made the battle between both sides intense to an unimaginable extent. The space in the center of the battlefield had already collapsed and turned into chaos. This had also increased the degree of danger on the battlefield. Now Yi Shiwen had directly rushed to the top of the Celestial Race's headquarters. It was no wonder that Yi Shiwen had to face the endless attacks of the enemy's morale as soon as he came out. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. No matter how strong an expert was, it was difficult to resist the joint attacks of countless people. This was reflected incisively and vividly in the military formation. Even the top experts rarely dared to attack the military formation. Therefore, Great Freedom Celestial's attack on the Allied forces' headquarters was regarded as a miracle. Especially the experts of both sides. They would be attacked by the morale of the enemy's army. They wouldn't dare to act as they pleased. However, experts of Yi Shiwen's level would only feel threatened here. No matter how many people there were in an ordinary military formation, they wouldn't be able to pose any threat to him. Let alone the automatic defense of the time robe. Yi Shiwen also opened his eyes of redemption. He instantly saw half of Great Freedom Celestial's body fleeing towards the Celestial Race's headquarters. Half of his body had already regrown. However, his strength and aura were no longer the same as when he first saw him. They were not on the same level at all. You want to leave? Yi Shiwen sneered. His hands tore the sky full of divine radiance, and directly tore a huge crack in the boundless morale. The demon wings on his back suddenly spread open, and he chased after Yi Shiwen like a streamer. In the blink of an eye, he had already caught up with Great Freedom Celestial. Great Freedom Celestial hadn't expected that Yi Shiwen's speed would be so fast. He had almost caught up with him in a blink of an eye. He was scared to death. He hadn't expected that half of his body, which had gathered most of his strength, couldn't even delay Yi Shiwen for a little bit. Was he already this strong? He couldn't imagine Yi Shiwen's strength anymore after seeing the miserable state of Cold Moon's Star Lord and Explosive Flame Tyrannical King. He believed that he would die a tragic death at Yi Shiwen's hands. However, at this time, Yi Shiwen was getting closer and closer. He immediately stopped and faced Yi Shiwen head-on, while the sky-splitting spear was directly thrown into the Heavenly Clan army. He was sacrificing himself to buy some time for the sky-splitter spear. This was also very possible. Yi Shiwen's appearance had alarmed the entire Tian clan allied forces in an instant. How could an expert of this level not shock everyone? Many figures had already rushed out from the void, their auras soared into the sky, and faintly surrounded Yi Shiwen to kill him. Just a little bit of time, and Yi Shiwen will be surrounded. At that time, Yi Shiwen will be dead. Yi Shiwen, I'll drag you down with me even if I die today. You've dared to break into our base camp. This is your biggest mistake. You'll die today. Yi Shiwen's face revealed a sinister look as he roared crazily, Yi Shiwen, I'll drag you down with me even if I die today. Yi Shiwen sneered slightly, do you think you can stop me? Those who block me will die. Buried sword technique. The Avicii sword in Yi Shiwen's hand instantly erupted with an astonishing sword light. It split in the sky, and transformed into a huge long river of sword principles in an instant. And it cleaved towards the Great Freedom Heaven. Puff! The Great Freedom Heavens didn't even have the time to react. He was chopped into pieces by Yi Shiwen, just like the other half of his body. His primordial spirit burned and melted. His flesh and blood were swallowed by the demon-calling flag. How dare you! Stop! A burst of angry roars came from the Tian clan coalition. Yi Shiwen had dared to kill people under their noses. He simply didn't put them in his eyes. It could even be said that this was equivalent to slapping their faces in front of their faces. Many people were even more shocked and angry. Yi Shiwen had killed Freedom in a very straightforward manner. He had killed him with one strike, and hadn't given them any time to rescue him. They were even more shocked in their hearts. The dignified world's #1 expert, Freedom, couldn't even resist one strike from Yi Shiwen, and was instantly killed. They could see that Freedom had been seriously injured, and his strength had been severely damaged. But even so, the fact that he couldn't even resist one strike from Yi Shiwen still left them completely stunned. They couldn't believe it. What the hell happened? How did this happen? Freedom was originally known as invincible. Why was he chased by Yi Shiwen in such a difficult situation? How did he get killed in a second before they could even rescue him? Could it be that Yi Shiwen had already become so strong? Many people's expressions suddenly changed. They were all high-level experts of the Tian clan. Some of them also knew why Freedom, Explosive Flame King, and Cold Moon Star Lord left their base camp and went to the abyss. They wanted to protect Emperor and I. But now only Freedom had escaped. What about Emperor and I? What about the others? What about Cold Moon Star Lord? What about Explosive Flame King? They were completely confused. But suddenly, a very bad thought flashed in their minds. Damn it! Could it be that even Emperor and I was killed by Yi Shiwen? If Freedom was dead, then they could still bear such a loss. But if even Emperor and I was killed, then they would really cry in the toilet. What the hell had happened to them? Could it be that the legendary Emperor had descended and manifested? This was probably the most reasonable explanation they could come up with. They simply could not imagine that 3 peak quasi-emperors, 2 Dao weapons, and a group of experts would be completely annihilated. Only the Mahasvara of the Realm of Freedom managed to return and was hunted down all the way to his hometown. Who could have such an ability? It must be the legendary Emperor. After all, Freedom was already the strongest person below the Emperor. Except for the Emperor, no one could hurt him like that. Not to mention that Yi Shiwen took advantage of the situation and killed him. And the culprit of all this was obviously Yi Shiwen in front of them. Go, kill him. We must not let him go. Catch him and force him to tell us what happened. Kill this damned human. The angry voices of many Tian clan experts suddenly spread in all directions, representing the anger of these top experts of the Tian clan. In addition to the aura of these top experts, there were also many powerful auras recovering. These were the powerful formations of the Tian clan army. In an instant, all of them had recovered. Many of these were Emperor level formations. The recovery of each formation could make ordinary quasi-emperors tremble. Now, all of them had recovered because of Yi Shiwen. In an instant, Yi Shiwen perceived countless tyrannical auras. Some of them even made his heart palpitate. In other words, they had the strength to threaten him. At this time, he understood why freedom was famous and became a miracle when he broke into the Allied forces to protect himself. It was because this in itself was a miracle. One or two of these auras and one or two Emperor Lord level formations would find it very difficult to deal with him given his current strength. In fact, even 10 or 8 Emperor Lord level formations wouldn't be able to deal with him. However, the situation would be completely different when these formations and auras increased to hundreds or thousands of them. Quantitative change would lead to qualitative change, and this would be the case. Yi Shiwen instantly stopped in his tracks. Although he was just a little bit away, he still watched helplessly as the sky-splitting spear escaped. In the depths of the Heavenly Clan's headquarters, several auras soared into the sky, piercing through the blue dome of heaven. Yi Shiwen immediately recognized them. They were actually the auras of Dao tools. Under the coordination of these Emperor Lord level arrays, they resonated with each other, bringing great pressure to Yi Shiwen. 1 or 2 experts weren't enough to scare him. However, when so many experts worked together, even an emperor would have to avoid them. Some of these methods could seriously injure an Emperor Lord. They were the unique methods left behind by the Emperor Lord's inheritances. They were also used by the Emperor Lord's inheritances to protect themselves. Yi Shiwen didn't want to bump into them and get exhausted to death. However, Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. Even if he reacted quickly, he had already chased too deep. The experts of the Tian clan had rushed over from all directions. From this aspect, Freedom's plan was considered successful. Although he couldn't even block Yi Shiwen's sword, he had still succeeded in delaying for time. He had successfully bought time for the other experts of the Tian clan to rush over. Many tyrannical auras had already appeared around Yi Shiwen. These experts of the Tian clan were like a pack of wolves that smelled blood. They rushed out directly. Even the Allied forces' headquarters were alarmed. They had been paying attention to the situation of the Tian clan. They immediately discovered the abnormal movements of the experts of the Tian clan. Suddenly, alarm bells rang. Everyone thought that the Tian clan was planning to launch a huge attack again. Experts from all sides gathered in an instant. What are the Tian clan planning to do? Are they planning to fight with us? At this time, Yi Shiwen, who was surrounded in the middle, didn't panic. He just said coldly, "Do you think that you can stop me by relying on numbers?" Chapter 2898. Although he was surrounded, Yi Shiwen was not worried. Breaking into the camp of the celestial race would pose a huge threat to him. However, as long as he did not break in, he did not need to be afraid of anyone with his current cultivation. Even a powerhouse with the cultivation of Mahasvara heaven would die in his hands. Yi Shiwen, why don't you quickly surrender? At this time, several tyrannical quasi-emperors had already flown around Yi Shiwen. Without exception, they all had a tyrannical aura. They were the best among the quasi-emperors. They were the elites of the elites who were stationed in the camp. These people were the closest to Yi Shiwen, so they were the first to fly over. Many great formations were being activated. Boom! An earth-shattering divine radiance turned into a beam of light and fiercely blasted towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! However, Yi Shiwen just waved his hand and instantly dispersed this earth-shattering divine radiance on the spot. This attack, which could threaten a quasi-emperor, did not even cause any trouble to Yi Shiwen. Seeing this scene, the complexion of the late-stage quasi-emperor expert of the heavenly race, who was the leader of the quasi-emperor experts, suddenly changed. His eyes flashed with a sharp light. Although he was confident that no one could be impudent in the heavenly races camp, he was not a fool. Yi Shiwen's attack had thoroughly shocked him. If it were him, even if he did not dodge, he would not be able to disperse this attack from a great formation with a casual attack. What an amazing degree of physical strength! At this time, he suddenly remembered all kinds of legends about Yi Shiwen. A long time ago, it was said that Yi Shiwen had killed a master of the late stage of quasi-emperor. In these years, even if he did not make any progress, he should not be underestimated. However, he did not care anymore, because at this time, the forcibly activated formations began to recover. Countless beams of light fell from the sky, penetrated the sky, and fiercely bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. For a moment the entire world was filled with these divine lights that filled the sky. They fell down like raindrops. However, these were no ordinary raindrop. Any one of them could pierce through the stars and overturn the world. This was a formation that had been left behind from ancient times until now. The celestial race had once used their own strength to fight against all the races in the universe, and developed their civilization to an unimaginable degree. In the path of formations they had also developed to the peak. They were invincible. Even among the inheritances of the various races, it was difficult to find so many powerful formations. However, the Tian clan was able to do so. One could imagine how tyrannical they were. Yi Shiwen was submerged in countless energy beams in an instant. His figure couldn't be seen clearly in an instant. That's great. Ha 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 ha, who asked him to be so arrogant? Now he knows how powerful we are. Many of the Tian clan experts could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Yi Shiwen himself was already famous, even if he had not made any progress in the past few years. He was still not someone an ordinary Tian clan could compare to. Everyone had witnessed how Yi Shiwen had insta-killed the vast freedom heavens. So, they couldn't help but feel nervous. So, they couldn't help but secretly cheer in their hearts when they saw Yi Shiwen being submerged in a tidal wave of attacks. Let him be cocky, but no matter how cocky he was, barging in so casually would only lead to death. Many of the war fortresses had just removed their camouflage. Originally, they were just about to open their cannons, but now it seemed that they didn't need to. However, just when they were heaving a sigh of relief, they found that in the area that had been smashed by the tidal wave of attacks, a figure was still standing in the void. Yi Shiwen, he's not dead, someone exclaimed. That tidal wave of attacks couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. However, what was even more terrifying was that they were horrified to find that Yi Shiwen didn't even have a decent injury on his body. It was almost as if he was completely unharmed. He had forcibly taken on an attack that could destroy a peak quasi-emperor, and yet he was completely unscathed. Many of the timid Tian clan experts even felt like their liver was being torn apart. Was he a monster? Even a powerful race like the Tian clan that dominated the world would feel fear when faced with something that was beyond their control. Moreover, it was an intense fear. He has the time robe, someone suddenly said, as if he had suddenly realized something. Only then did everyone understand why Yi Shiwen was able to block their attacks so easily. Although the array formation they had left behind was the means of an emperor, the other party had a Dao tool on him. Was there anything more direct than this? Go, continue to attack. I don't believe that he can activate the time magic robe to a certain extent. Attack him until he reaches the critical point. Even if the time magic robe can withstand the attacks, I don't believe that he has enough emperor origins to activate the time magic robe. Someone roared in anger. Many people came back to their senses. Indeed, a person with a Dao tool was indeed powerful, but he still couldn't ignore the counterattack of the Tian clan. Since ancient times, even those emperor-level inheritances with Dao tools couldn't dominate the world because of this. Whoosh! 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 Countless divine lights soared into the sky, and instantly blasted towards Yi Shiwen again. For a time, the attacks that blotted out the sky swept towards Yi Shiwen like a tide. It was almost impenetrable. The endless attacks had no loopholes at all. From all directions, all of Yi Shiwen's escape routes were blocked. However, a scene that everyone didn't expect happened. Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest intention to dodge. In his hand, a stone sword appeared, and countless stone energy burst out in an instant. And then Yi Shiwen suddenly made his move. Bang! 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 In an instant, Yi Shiwen threw out thousands of sword lights in the sky. These sword lights seemed to have completely divided the world into countless pieces in an instant. It was terrifying. Those divine lights that rushed over were instantly cut by Yi Shiwen's sword lights. Yi Shiwen's sword shadows had also reached an unimaginable speed. So, these densely packed and tide-like divine light attacks couldn't break through the sword shadows around Yi Shiwen's body even once. Not even a single one of them could break through the sword shadows around him. Everyone could only watch as Yi Shiwen's sword lights organized an astonishing wall around his body. All the attacks that reached his body were annihilated and engulfed. So fast. The few quasi-emperors who were in front of Yi Shiwen just now had already flown far away. Otherwise, they would have been affected by the tide of divine light. They didn't have Yi Shiwen's skills, so they were afraid that they would be killed in an instant. But at this time, they couldn't help but be shocked. With the vision of their quasi-emperors, they couldn't see through Yi Shiwen's attack speed. They could only watch as Yi Shiwen's sword shadows formed a protection around him. That tide-like offensive suddenly stopped. Everyone was shocked to find that not only was Yi Shiwen motionless, but there was also a faint smile on his face. It seemed as if he was laughing at their attacks. Just now, there were some people of the celestial race who thought that Yi Shiwen could block the attack just now because of the Emperor Source and the Time Robe. But now, Yi Shiwen had slapped their faces with his actions. Even if he didn't use the Dao tools, they couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. How can he be so fast? The people of the celestial race couldn't help but be stunned. Yi Shiwen's attack speed was really fast, blinding their corium or dog eyes. Among them, there were some who were good at speed, but at this time, compared with Yi Shiwen, they quickly realized that it was impossible for them to have that kind of speed. If they didn't have Yi Shiwen's speed, it was absolutely impossible to survive such an attack. How can his strength be so strong to this extent? In the camp of the celestial race, a high-level celestial race said in shock. Yi Shiwen was the most rising top expert of the human race. It was impossible for the celestial race to not pay attention to him. Because of this, they thought that they knew Yi Shiwen's strength like the back of their hands. They couldn't believe it. How could Yi Shiwen's cultivation advance by leaps and bounds in such a short period of time? Go, kill him. I just asked the sky-splitting spear. In the abyss, this guy not only killed Freedom Heaven, Explosive Flame Evil King, and Cold Moon Star Lord, even the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand fell into his hands. A high-level celestial race was instantly furious. But this guy's strength is too strong. He is almost above Freedom Heaven. If we want to force him to stay, we will have to pay an absolutely huge price. Even our camp of the celestial race may suffer heavy losses. The losses are immeasurable. Even if the losses are immeasurable now, it is better than letting him grow. We can still deal with him now. Do we have to wait for him to achieve Tao in the future? A high-level celestial race said angrily. We must kill him while the situation is still under control. We must not let him go. Soon, the high-level celestial race had already made a decision. Even if they had to suffer heavy losses, they must make him stay. Most importantly, they still had a trump card. As long as D&I achieved Tao, not to mention heavy losses, even if there was only one person left, they could still turn the situation around. Moreover, the celestial race's camp was only a part of the overall strength of the celestial race. It was far from the time when they would suffer heavy losses. Go. Kill him! We can't let him escape. Not only did he kill Mahasvara, explosive flame ruthless king, and frigid moon, but even the dark Bodhi divine hand has fallen into his hands. Someone in the celestial camp roared. It immediately aroused the anger of everyone. Obviously, the sky-splitting spear had fled back and informed everyone about the situation in the abyss. They also knew what had happened in the abyss, which made everyone even more shocked. Chapter 2899. The higher-ups of the celestial race were furious when they heard this news. No matter what price they had to pay, they had to kill Yishiwen. Not only did they have to avenge Great Freedom Heaven and take back the dark Bodhi divine hand, but most importantly, once such a terrifying person grew up, who could stop him? In the past, Great Freedom Heaven was known as the #1 expert in the world, and there were experts who could deal with him. But now, who could stop Yishiwen? He was simply a monster. Yishiwen's cultivation had reached this level, so it was very difficult to kill him. It was just like how the allied forces of the various races couldn't do anything to the Great Freedom Heavens. At this time, the high-level experts of the celestial race also felt helpless. It was impossible for Yishiwen to destroy the celestial race's barracks by himself. However, their grand ambitions would become a joke if they allowed such a terrifying expert to remain outside. This was a rare opportunity. Yishiwen had fallen into their encirclement. No matter what price they had to pay, they had to kill him. Otherwise, it would be difficult to think of an opportunity to kill Yishiwen. Under the anger of the higher-ups of the celestial race, many hidden means were used in the celestial race's camp. Huge war fortresses were pushed out one after another. They removed their disguises, revealing extremely ferocious cannons. Cold war machines divided the world one by one. War beasts were awakened one after another. Their huge bodies moved like stars, trampling on the void, setting off waves of astonishing fluctuations that swept in all directions. One after another, ancient magic arrays appeared in the void. Array patterns appeared in the world and an endless amount of energy was poured into them. Next, the aura of the Tao artifact was also awakening. It was not easy to completely awaken an existence at the level of a Tao artifact. Every awakening required a huge price. Unless someone was willing to pay such a price for them, they would definitely not be willing to awaken so casually. In order to eliminate Yishiwen, this time the higher-ups of the celestial race had put in a lot of effort. They had to get rid of him at all costs. These terrifying forces were also awakened one by one. Just the awakening alone required a huge price, not to mention other things. Yishiwen, this time you will definitely die. Don't even think about escaping. At this time, many of the celestial race roared. The existence of this person was a huge scourge to the entire Tian clan. He wished that he could kill Yishiwen completely. More and more experts appeared around him. Soon, more and more powerful auras appeared around Yishiwen. In the distance, the allied armies of the various races had already gathered, facing the Tian clan's army from afar. The allied armies of the various races were shocked by the Tian clan's sudden actions. What kind of joke was this? Could it be that they were planning to organize an army to fight a decisive battle with them? But very quickly, they discovered that the Tian clan had mobilized a large army. Many methods and trump cards that they had never used before had been mobilized, but it was not to deal with them. Instead, they surrounded the camp they were in. Originally, they didn't know what had happened, but very quickly, the spies they had hidden within the Tian clan sent news. It was none other than Yishiwen who had caused the heavenly race to go to war. All the higher-ups of the allied forces looked at each other in disbelief. Yishiwen? How is that possible? Although Yishiwen's strength isn't bad, it isn't to the point where the Tian clan has to pay such a huge price for him. Even the Flame Lord, who was usually the most confident in Yishiwen, couldn't believe it, let alone the higher-ups of the allied forces. Although Yi Shiwen had already displayed amazing combat power before, judging from the situation at that time, if Yi Shiwen dared to break into the Tian clan's camp directly, he would die. There was no need to pay such a huge price at all. Suddenly, some people remembered that when Great Freedom Celestial broke into their camp, they also seemed to have such a huge lineup. However, how could Yi Shiwen be compared with Great Freedom Celestial? That time, Great Freedom Celestial broke into the headquarters of the Allied forces, and finally caused the Allied forces to go to war, but the other party still retreated unscathed. It could be said to be extremely humiliating. It was also after that time that Great Freedom Celestial truly obtained the title of the world's #1, and was recognized by both the Tian clan and the Allied forces as the world's #1 expert. And now Yi Shiwen also received the same treatment from the Tian clan. Why? Could it be that Yi Shiwen had already become so powerful? Then, more and more news came, which made them have no choice but to confirm that the Tian clan's army was indeed dispatched to deal with Yi Shiwen, and only to deal with one person. More and more shocking news came out, leaving the higher-ups of the Allied forces dumbfounded. They couldn't believe it at all. Yi Shiwen killed Great Freedom Celestial, Explosive Flame Evil King, and Cold Moon Star Lord in the Abyss, and even seized the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand, and severely injured the Sky-Splitting Spear. Everyone looked as if they had seen a ghost. "Is he using a cheat?" a higher-up of the Allied forces said in a dumbfounded manner. Many people knew that Yi Shiwen had gone into closed-door training. Whether it was the higher-ups of the Allied forces or the Tian clan, they had been paying attention to it. Everyone was clear about Yi Shiwen's strength before he went into closed-door training. At most, he could kill experts of the late stage of Quasi-Emperor. This was already his limit. Who would have thought that after coming out of closed-door training, he would actually reach a realm that they didn't even dare to imagine in such a short period of time? Other than using a cheat to describe it, they simply couldn't think of any other words to describe it. Many people had originally shouted that this was simply impossible. However, they had no choice but to believe it in the face of ironclad facts. Next, there was a problem in front of them. Yi Shiwen was besieged. Should they go and rescue him? To a large extent, Great Freedom Celestial had been able to escape unscathed because the Tian clan had sent people to rescue him. This had disrupted the deployment of the Allied forces, and had given him the opportunity to escape. In all fairness, many people didn't like Yi Shiwen. Especially those old monsters who had lived for countless years. Yi Shiwen was too good at stirring up trouble. A young junior was stealing the limelight. How could these old seniors like them endure it? There were many people who had such thoughts and didn't get along with Yi Shiwen. Not to mention, there were many people who had huge conflicts with Yi Shiwen. These people were not a small number among the higher-ups of the Allied forces. They were definitely a huge group. Of course, there were also many people who wanted to help Yi Shiwen. So, the higher-ups of the Allied forces couldn't make a decision for a while. What are we waiting for? Are we going to regret it after Yi Shiwen is killed and we lose such a big helper? Even the Tian clan wants to go to war to deal with him. Don't tell me that you can't see his value? A cold voice suddenly came. It was Fiery Dragon Supreme who had spoken. Fiery Dragon Supreme wasn't only powerful. He had also followed Emperor Qin to war. He was very experienced. Moreover, he had the backing of the martial great sect. Therefore, everyone dared to ignore Yi Shiwen. But they didn't dare to ignore his words. That's right. Fighting against the Tian clan is the overall situation. Yi Shiwen has killed Great Freedom Celestial King, Cold Moon Star Lord, and Explosive Flame Evil King. It doesn't matter how he did it. He has made a great contribution. How can we watch our hero die inside? Who would dare to risk their lives for the Allied forces in the future? A higher-up of the Allied forces suddenly stood up. He was filled with righteous indignation as he spoke. I agree with Fiery Dragon Supreme's opinion. Suddenly, even Lucifer of the Fallen Angel clan, who had rarely expressed his opinion, also spoke up. He was another old senior who was extremely powerful and experienced. The martial great sect, the ancient heavenly court, and many other forces also came forward to agree with Yi Shiwen. These forces were originally on good terms with Yi Shiwen, so they formed a mighty force at this time. Everyone's eyes were looking at the hidden Devil Clan and the other forces that had been in conflict with Yi Shiwen. These forces were the key to deciding everything. My original Devil Clan has no objection, the old ancestor of the original Devil Clan said. My hidden Devil Clan has no objection either. The other forces finally heaved a sigh of relief as the old ancestor of the original Devil Clan and the others had expressed their opinion. These people had been the most resolute in opposing Yi Shiwen. But even they didn't have any objection now. So, the entire resolution naturally didn't have any exception. Everyone has no objection. Pass down the order. Assemble the army, attack the base of the Tian clan, and create a passage for Yi Shiwen. The higher-ups of the Allied forces had reached an agreement. So, the Allied forces started to move very quickly. Armies were assembled one after another. Countless war beasts and war machines were pushed out and quickly entered the path of war. The actions of the Allied forces soon attracted the attention of the experts of the Tian clan. However, they had already decided to kill Yi Shiwen no matter the cost. So, they naturally wouldn't give up just because of the pressure of the Allied forces. So, they quickly mobilized their elites to stop the Allied forces. The rest of them continued to encircle Yi Shiwen. They must kill him thoroughly. Yi Shiwen didn't know what was happening outside while he was heavily surrounded. Countless elite troops of the Tian clan had already appeared around him. Yi Shiwen could casually pinch many of them to death in a one-on-one fight. However, these experts of the Tian clan had formed an army, and they had greatly increased their strength with the help of military formations. They had been used to confront Yi Shiwen. Bang! Facing these attacks, Yi Shiwen naturally would not sit still and wait for death. His entire person was like a prehistoric ferocious beast. Wherever he passed, the Tian clan army would collapse. The army that could normally slaughter divine kings and even threaten quasi-emperors was nothing in front of him. In this situation, Yi Shiwen naturally didn't dare to hide his strength. He directly took out the Avici sword. With a slash of the sword, the entire army of the Tian clan collapsed instantly, turning into a bloody mist that filled the sky and was absorbed by the demon flag. For a time, it was a reign of terror. Chapter 2900. There were more and more experts in the Sky Clan, almost endless. They intended to kill Yi Shiwen no matter the cost. Yi Shiwen's Avici sword was indeed powerful, but he gradually felt some pressure. These people wanted to use their lives to hold him back. More and more attacks fell. Unless it was the Emperor, no one could penetrate the entire Sky Clan's camp with their own strength. At this moment, when the Sky Clan thought that they had succeeded, they saw Yi Shiwen directly throw out the Demon Clan army. He waved the demon flag, and all the Demon Clan in the world sensed it. In the past, when the Demon Emperor waved the demon flag, all the famous Demon Clan in the world had to come to his tent to obey his orders. Those who disobeyed would die. Yi Shiwen's strength was naturally far from the level of the Demon Emperor in the past. It was impossible for him to summon all the Demon Clan in the world. However, his current strength was not shallow. When he used it, many powerful Demon Clan could feel it immediately. In particular, the Demon Clan in the Coalition Army headquarters immediately sensed the demon flag. Although they were not the Demon Clan patriarchs who made a contract with the ancient heavenly court, they were all descendants of these ancient demons. This contract was made by the ancient heavenly court. It would be passed down from generation to generation along with their bloodline. It would never be severed. Usually, when no one used this demon flag, they could not feel it. However, now they immediately felt the call of the bloodline in their bodies. Many of them actually did not remember this matter, But at this time, they were suddenly awakened. They looked at each other and did not know what to say. But at this time, a mighty demon clan army rushed out and appeared in the void. All kinds of extremely powerful ancient demons and great demons rushed out. It was completely different from when Yi Shiwen first got the demon flag. At that time, these ancient demons and great demons only had a trace of spirit left. In other words, they were the remnants of a trace of spirit. The ancient heavenly court relied on this trace of spirit to control them. But now, they had already condensed powerful bodies under Yi Shiwen's many years of nurturing. They might still be a little weak in a one-on-one fight. However, they would be an invincible army once they formed a large army to attack. Boom! As soon as the Demon Clan army appeared, they instantly defeated a Tian Clan army that surrounded them. With a single charge, they turned into a blood mist that filled the sky and were swallowed by these ancient demons and great demons. The strength of this Demon Clan army increased further. In the sky and on the ground, there were endless figures of the spirit demon army everywhere, especially these ancient demons and great demons, who had accompanied the ancient heavenly court in countless years of battles. In terms of strength and battle experience, they were countless times stronger than the new Tian Clan army. All sorts of ancient demon techniques that might have been lost to the world were used, sweeping across the sky and shattering countless Tian Clan army formations. Wherever the soldiers passed by, they were invincible. Those who were watching from afar were shocked. This was simply an unstoppable group of soldiers with unimaginably terrifying bloodthirstiness. Above each of their heads, there was a battle chi. These battle chi and blood chi fused together, turning the surroundings into an Azura battlefield. In the distance, the attacks of the Tian clan continued to fall, and the cannons on the war fortress continued to sweep out with astonishing attacks. Ancient demons and great demons were continuously killed and evaporated on the spot, but very quickly, they once again emerged from the demon beckoning banner. These were all just primordial spirits, so there was no question of life and death. They would be able to quickly recover, but they would be much weaker than before, and their condensed bodies would also collapse. However, very quickly, they would be able to absorb the blood mist that filled the sky and condense their bodies again. It was as if they were undying and indestructible, constantly piercing forward and piercing through. The Tian clan never thought that Yi Shiwen would actually be able to create such an army. Although there weren't many true experts in this army, especially the decisive quasi-emperor, there were only 2 or 3 of them, and they were still relatively weak. But don't forget, there was still Yi Shiwen. With Yi Shiwen as the arrow, the entire Demon Clan army was moving at an astonishing speed, piercing through the direction of the Tian clan. Wherever the soldiers passed, it was simply like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Some powerful Tian clan quasi-emperors wanted to stop them, but they were all killed by Yi Shiwen's sword. The rest of them were quickly drowned in the Demon Clan army, smashed into meat paste and devoured. This was an astonishing massacre. The experts of the Tian clan were scattered everywhere to surround and intercept Yi Shiwen, but at this time they were stretched thin. There were a lot of troops everywhere, but not enough to stop Yi Shiwen and his group. This was simply a massacre. It was not on the same order of magnitude at all. In particular, there were many divine archers in the Demon Clan army, and there was even a quasi-emperor-level divine archer. He was riding on a huge star beast, and the star beast was crushing the enemies in front of him, while he himself was shooting towards those valuable targets without a care for anything else. Arrows pierced through the sky one after another, piercing through the galaxy. Many of the arrays, war fortresses, and war beasts that were originally displaying their divine might were shot and exploded on the spot. The power of the arrows was simply astonishing. There were even quasi-emperors who were too far away and were not prepared for it at all. They were shot to death, and the arrows directly pierced through their physical bodies. Then, their bodies crashed into a few stars before they finally shattered into pieces. In the Tian clan, the alarm bells were ringing. The situation was even more serious than they had imagined. Yi Shiwen had too many methods in his hands. Not only was the Avicii sword and the time robe on his body displaying their might, even the demon summoning banner was extremely terrifying. Especially in such a huge battlefield, Yi Shiwen did not need to replenish the loss of the demon summoning banner. He only needed to constantly devour the blood essence to replenish it. The entire battlefield was filled with blood mist, which was visible to the naked eye. One could imagine how thick the blood mist was. Only in this way could the demon clan in the demon summoning banner be able to sustain the losses. The price that Yi Shiwen had to pay was to use the Emperor Source to activate the demon summoning banner. Kill! There were shouts everywhere. At this moment, this was a torrent of steel. Nothing could stop their advance. It was as if the expedition army of the ancient heavenly court had revived from ancient times and reappeared. Roar! At this time, an incomparably huge ferocious beast directly flew out from the depths of the Tian clan. It was a winged dragon. Its whole body was black, and as it flapped its wings, the world turned upside down. The huge stars collapsed together with it, tearing apart the soldiers' chi that filled the sky. A majestic coercion of a Taoist tool swept down. This winged dragon roared, and it was unknown how many stars were shattered. From its mouth, a black light was spat out, which turned into a long saber. The saber chi swept across the vast field, sweeping in all directions. This saber directly chopped down, and the entire demon clan army was split into two halves. Countless demon clan soldiers were turned into nothingness, but soon it resurrected and appeared here. Taoist tool. It was another Taoist tool. Yi Shiwen looked at it. It was not that the long saber was a Taoist tool, but this winged dragon itself was a huge Taoist tool. His eyes of redemption had been cultivated to an extremely high level. He could see through the essence of all things in the world and see through everything at a glance. This Taoist tool turned into a winged dragon and rushed towards the Tian clan army at an astonishing speed. It was extremely terrifying. On the other side, the myriad worlds diagram also appeared in an instant. The diagram was like a world, growing bigger and bigger. Everywhere it went, the sky and earth collapsed, and rocks flew into the sky. The whole world directly crushed down, intending to suppress the entire demon clan army in one breath. Others might not be able to do this, but the myriad worlds diagram had such power. The myriad worlds diagram condensed a part of the will of countless worlds, which were collected by the emperor of the Tian clan in the past. At this time, with the help of the will of various worlds, the myriad worlds diagram projected their power to crush all strong enemies. It was very terrifying, and at this time, the myriad worlds diagram was not simply awakened, but it was burning to the extreme. Obviously, it wanted to catch Yi Shiwen in one fell swoop and completely eradicate him at all costs. Yi Shiwen did not hesitate in the slightest in the face of the siege of these two great Taoist tools. He immediately flew up, and the time robe on his body instantly erupted with a dazzling brilliance, forming a divine kingdom of time. This enveloped the demon race army, protecting them first. Then, he rushed out. Dominator's swordsmanship! Yi Shiwen roared, using the Avicii sword to activate the Dominator's swordsmanship. In an instant, a scarlet sword swept out, and countless Taoist symbols swept out, flowing, and directly slashed towards the myriad worlds diagram. Boom! An incomparably loud explosion rang out. This attack simply had an unimaginable destructive power. The collision between the two seemed to cause the entire heavens and earth to collapse. The destructive aura caused the entire heavenly clan's camp to collapse. Yi Shiwen swept away the crushing power of the myriad worlds diagram in one fell swoop, holding the Avicii sword in his hand, and took the lead, rushing to the front. Get out of my way, those who block me will die. Behind Yi Shiwen, banners fluttered in the wind. Countless demon race cavalry moved with him, trampling on the vault of heaven, rumbling. With him as the arrowhead, wherever he went, the celestial race army would collapse, unable to stop him at all. If the heavenly race's camp was well prepared and had so many array formations, then perhaps they could stop Yi Shiwen. But now Yi Shiwen did not walk into the Tian clan camp, but out, so no one could stop him at all, and they were all blown away by him. In an instant there were heavy casualties, and the sky was full of blood. Chapter 29:01. Get out of my way. Those who stand in my way will die. Yi Shiwen roared. His whole body's power surged, bursting with amazing divine light. His whole body was like a big sun blooming in the sky. His whole body was like a humanoid beast. Wherever he went, he crushed everything. Almost everywhere he went, mountains collapsed, and the sky and earth collapsed. His whole body was bathed in bloody light, and he fought with all his strength. Especially when Yi Shiwen was fighting, some ancient formations were activated one after another. All of them blocked in front of Yi Shiwen. Originally, they were used as a secret weapon. If they encountered the attack of the allied forces, they could catch them off guard. But now, they were all used on Yi Shiwen. These arrays were revived one after another, erupting with formidable power. They were worthy of being the backup plan prepared by the Heaven Race. None of them were simple, and they were extremely powerful. However, under the situation where Yi Shiwen used the Avicii sword to open the way, they were useless. Often, as soon as they were revived, Yi Shiwen would slash them apart with his sword. They would completely lose their function and become useless. Yi Shiwen's fighting technique was very simple, but it was also because of this that the power was even more terrifying. He simply used the Avicii sword to open the way. Those who stood in his way would die. It was as simple as that. Yi Shiwen, you're going to die today. Just surrender. In front of him, an amazing sword aura descended from the sky, directly piercing towards Yi Shiwen. Another Dao tool completed its recovery, and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. But he was no longer a stranger. Sword of Domination. The Sword of Domination was directly in front of Yi Shiwen. Behind him, there was the powerful winged dragon and the myriad worlds diagram. 3 great Dao tools surrounded Yi Shiwen. In addition, there were many tricks of the Celestial clan. It could be said that they had used all their trump cards. They really wanted to completely seal Yi Shiwen here. A battle was inevitable, and it was about to break out. And behind the Sword of Domination, there were many elites of the Celestial clan blocking in front of the Demon clan army. They were definitely the elites of the Celestial clan. Rush over, kill them! Yi Shiwen roared. The blood energy of the demon race behind him overflowed into the sky. Their battle chi surged like ancient demons. The great demons had been revived. Wherever they went, the heavens and the earth split apart. It was unknown how many stars were destroyed in an instant. Under Yi Shiwen's lead, they directly charged towards the elites of the heavenly race. Normal people would still feel fear, but their primordial spirits were bound by the demon summoning banner. They wouldn't be afraid at all, nor did they need to be afraid. As long as the demon summoning banner existed, they could live forever. What normal people feared was nothing to them. Blood splashed everywhere, and corpses fell to the ground. It was an incomparably tragic scene. Yi Shiwen rushed to the forefront and took the lead. Yi Shiwen, since ancient times, no one has been able to charge into the Tian clan's camp without paying the price. Today, you will pay the price with your life. A middle-aged man appeared on the ruler's sword. He wore a simple robe, and held the ruler's sword in his hand. It was none other than the spirit of the ruler's sword, and it had manifested to kill Yi Shiwen. At this time, the experts of the Tian clan had also killed until their eyes were bloodshot. If they couldn't stop Yi Shiwen now, wouldn't it be equivalent to wasting all their previous efforts? So why were they fighting so hard? At this time, a terrifying figure had actually lurked beside Yi Shiwen. The terrifying aura on his body even startled the heavens and earth. It was extremely terrifying. This person's body was covered in beast fur, like an upright beast. The blood energy on his body was very powerful, but Yi Shiwen had never seen this person before. At times, this person was like a wild beast, and at other times, he was like an almighty with powerful magic power. This was a different path to attaining the Tao, completely different from the normal path. Transforming himself into a beast, this was completely different from the normal path of cultivation. Ordinary people transformed from beasts to humans. The people here were not only worthy of being human, but also referred to the Tao body of a human, which was naturally suitable for cultivation. However, this person's cultivation path was clearly the opposite. He had completely turned into a wild beast. The foundation of the Tian clan was really deep and terrifying. Yi Shiwen had never heard of this person. He had never seen this person before. However, this person's cultivation was not much worse than Freedom Heaven's. It was just that he had never fought before, so he didn't have much reputation. In other words, he hadn't fought after the seal of the Tian clan was lifted, so no one knew about him. Traces of the Tao flickered when he attacked. It penetrated people's hearts and contained the great principles of the Tao. It was an amazing killing technique. At this time, only experts of this level would dare to attack Yi Shiwen. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to stop Yi Shiwen. Anyone who blocks my path will die. Even the great Freedom Heaven has died in my hand. So, what makes you think that you can stop me? Yi Shiwen sneered. He rushed forward and collided with him. Bang! 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 This beast man was extremely powerful. His attack was incomparably swift and fierce. It made the sky and earth turn upside down. For a moment, he was able to completely cover Yi Shiwen and seize the upper hand. Do you only have this kind of means? Yi Shiwen suddenly sneered and said, If this is all you have, then you can die. 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist. Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch. The sky and earth cracked. Both sides directly collided in the air. Bang! A loud collision sound was heard, followed by a series of cracking sounds coming from the beastman's strong body. His arm was instantly crippled and broken. All of this took a long time to describe. In fact, it happened in a matter of minutes. Yi Shiwen had probed his bottom line. He was still a bit weaker than Freedom Heaven's. How could he stop Yi Shiwen? He didn't have a Tao tool in hand. He was far weaker than Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen didn't have a Tao tool, then he could fight. Now that Yi Shiwen had a Tao tool in hand, the situation was completely different. He only needed one punch to break the beastman's arm. The Tian clan beastman retreated again and again. He didn't dare to move forward. He wanted to protect himself. He only wanted to delay Yi Shiwen's advance. He didn't want to die. But how could Yi Shiwen give him such an opportunity? He took a step forward and rushed forward. He punched the beastman's head and it exploded. His spirit was destroyed. The beastman's body was devoured by the demon clan army that was chasing after him. He couldn't stop Yi Shiwen at all. But he also made time for the Sword of Domination to attack. It delayed Yi Shiwen's footsteps. The Sword of Domination attacked directly. It instantly rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. It didn't attack the ordinary demon clan because it didn't need to. As long as it killed Yi Shiwen, the demon clan army would naturally collapse. Moreover, it had seen clearly from the side. The demon clan army was inexhaustible. If it couldn't get rid of the demon summoning flag, then killing more demon clan soldiers would be useless. It naturally knew about the famous demon summoning flag. It was just that the person back then didn't use it like Yi Shiwen did. The demon summoning flag's power was enough to be invincible. He had no other choice. The demon beckoning banner was damaged. So, it was impossible for the demon beckoning banner to be on par with an intact Tao tool like the Sword of Domination. On the other hand, the great demon and ancient demon's primordial spirit could form another army. But Yi Shiwen had no other choice. It was just that it wasn't easy to raise them. If it was a demon emperor, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. But for Yi Shiwen, it was still worth it. In the blink of an eye, he had already made a decision. He would kill Yi Shiwen first. He also knew that the person in front of him was definitely a difficult opponent. But he didn't want to kill Yi Shiwen. He just wanted to delay Yi Shiwen. Boom! His sword slashed down towards Yi Shiwen. In an instant, a huge collapse occurred in front of Yi Shiwen. Many of the faster demon race experts were instantly turned into blood mist. A blood-red sky appeared. The battle had reached its climax. A terrible shock turned into waves that spread in all directions. This sword fell directly. It was as if it had fallen from the 9 heavens. The sword light burst out with the light of a mother and went straight towards Yi Shiwen. Clang! The Avicii sword in Yi Shiwen's hand instantly moved. He didn't dodge or evade. He directly collided with the sword of domination. The two Dao weapons collided. One could imagine how powerful they were. Instantly, the shock waves swept thousands of miles. Countless celestial race and demon clan experts were affected. They screamed and turned into blood mist on the spot. It was just a simple collision, but it was unbearable for both sides. The sword of domination retreated several steps before it finally stopped. It had suffered a small loss in the collision with Yi Shiwen. But this was just the beginning. At this moment, he finally understood why the Sky Splitter and Great Freedom Celestial had suffered such a big loss at Yi Shiwen's hands. The Sky Splitter had been seriously injured, and Great Freedom Celestial had died. Even the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand couldn't be saved. This fellow was simply too ferocious. Even the Sword of Domination couldn't withstand it. Wouldn't ordinary peak quasi-emperors be defeated in one hit? Just as the Sword of Domination was thinking about this, Yi Shiwen didn't give him a chance to catch his breath. He rushed out again. Overturning the Sky Seal. Yi Shiwen used the Overturning the Sky Seal and smashed it down. In an instant, heaven and earth turned upside down. All the power was concentrated on his big hand. Bang! Yi Shiwen's Overturning the Sky Seal smashed onto the Sword of Domination. Suddenly, the Sword of Domination was sent flying. He felt dizzy. His chest tightened. His chi and blood surged. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. How is this possible? The Sword of Domination couldn't believe it. He knew very well that he had already exploded to the limit. He had also recovered to the limit. How could he still not be able to withstand a single blow? Was he a monster? Chapter 2902. Yi Shiwen's strength had already risen to a level higher than that of the Realm of Freedom. The Robe of Time had also been fully awakened and used by him. This made Yi Shiwen's strength completely beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Even the spirit of an Emperor Lord could be cut down without blinking an eye. The sword light of the Sword of Domination burst out. The divine power did not diminish, but became even more terrifying. It directly turned into a shocking sword light and slashed towards Yi Shiwen. Suddenly, the surrounding celestial race and demon race only felt a loud whistling sound. Everyone's eardrums were almost shattered. Their souls were unstable, and there was a possibility that their bodies would be crushed. This attack of his traversed the sky and directly shattered everything. It was like a huge rainbow traversed the sky dome, directly strangling out, sweeping a large area of afterglow, forming a field of swordsmanship. Before the sword power fell, many experts of the celestial race and demon race were crushed by the sword power and completely turned into blood mist. In the face of this amazing attack, Yi Shiwen did not dodge. He directly stepped forward, and a sky full of golden light appeared under his feet. Bang! Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch and smashed it on the sword light. In an instant there was a huge explosion, and suddenly there was a wave of trembling. Whether it was Yi Shiwen's fist power or the sword light of the Sword of Domination, both had unimaginable power. Both sides did not try to test each other. The clanging sound of swords circulated between heaven and earth. Yi Shiwen's fist power set off a monstrous divine light that seemed to drown the entire world. In an instant, countless big stars collapsed and turned into dust. Die! At this moment, Yi Shiwen rushed out again. He launched one attack after another. He didn't have the slightest chance to take a breather. He displayed an incomparably powerful secret technique right from the start. His whole body was wrapped in divine radiance. He looked solemn and peerless. Overturning the sky seal, 3 seals into one. In front of Yi Shiwen was the overturning the sky seal, and on the left and right were the shaking mountain seal and the overturning sea seal. At this moment, the 3 seals merged together, forming a monstrous fierce wave that directly smashed down. The sword of domination was immediately smashed. It was still immersed in the previous attack, and had not completely recovered. At this time, Yi Shiwen completely attacked, not giving it any time to breathe. Boom! Yi Shiwen's 3 combined seals smashed down, and instantly formed a huge mushroom cloud. The sword of domination was blasted away, and its spirit body cracked open in the air. It actually showed signs of collapsing. This was an extremely terrifying sign. His spirit body itself was incomparably sturdy, and it was impossible for him to be in such a state so easily. It was almost as if he had been severely injured in an instant. At this point, it was already a life and death struggle, almost touching upon the Tao attainment level of power, making one shiver inwardly. When the huge mushroom cloud rose up, not only did the Tian clan people see it, even the experts from the allied forces of the various races saw it. Especially the experts who had taken the lead. Fiery Dragon Lord and the others had seen Yi Shiwen's sword of domination being smashed and sent flying. He almost tripped over. He felt that the world was filled with coldness. His junior felt a chill run down his spine, and he was drenched in cold sweat. What did they see? A fully awakened and terrifying Tao tool was actually smashed and sent flying. Were their eyes playing tricks on them? At this time, they had completely confirmed that the Tian clan had dispatched so many experts to deal with Yi Shiwen. Moreover, it could be said that it was not an exaggeration to mobilize such a large force. In the face of a monster who could smash a Tao tool, it was not an exaggeration to take it seriously. As for why he had an additional demon clan army, many people had already guessed the reason. After all, some people had seen the demon summoning banner in action before, and this was all within their expectations. However, many people were still a little unable to adapt to Yi Shiwen's fierceness. Compared to before he went into closed-door cultivation, they could only say one sentence. He has become stronger. He has become stronger again. What a monster! The people of the myriad heavens and myriad worlds could no longer control him. However, before they could recover, they saw Yi Shiwen attack further. He directly took a step forward, rushed to the front of the sword of domination, and continued to chase. Behind him, the Tian clan army, with Yi Shiwen as the arrowhead, pierced through all the way. Wherever he passed, the Tian clan army also collapsed. Compared to the Tian clan army, the demon clan army that Yi Shiwen had summoned was a little smaller in number, but it was more flexible and could be commanded by Yi Shiwen. In addition, many of these ancient demons and great demons were experts who had been fighting for many years. They were very experienced in war, and any one of them was a master of war. When they commanded the army, they were like fish in water, like a piece of art. Yi Shiwen took a step forward, and chased after the sword of domination. Damn it! The sword of domination could not help but roar, but it was useless. Yi Shiwen did not give it a chance to breathe at all. The Avicii sword in his hand flourished, and fiercely slashed down. Sword of domination! Yi Shiwen simply used the sword of domination's sword technique to resist the sword of domination. The sword of domination was directly slashed, and its entire body flew out, and its spiritual body exploded in the air. Although it immediately reassembled, it was already a lot more transparent. This reassembly also consumed a lot of energy. Not to mention, some of the serious injuries could not be healed even after the reassembly of the physical body. However, at this moment, the myriad worlds diagram and the huge pterosaur had already flown over. In particular, that pterosaur had a huge stature. It looked like a huge star. It had a pair of divine wings flapping behind its back. The sharp horns on its head were like the sharpest health products in the world. It directly cut through the sky, and a huge sword light rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. "Come, let's fight again." Yi Shiwen had no intention of pursuing further. He directly put down the sword of domination and turned around to face the pterosaur. Bang! Yi Shiwen's fist directly hit the sharp horn on the pterosaur's head, and a huge explosion occurred. In an instant, it was like two pieces of the world's hardest metal had collided, and the world trembled. Raging waves slammed into the shore, and rubble flew into the sky. The stars, the sun, and the moon all rotated, condensed together, and then released crazily. This time, in this shocking collision, Yi Shiwen did not move an inch, but the huge pterosaur was smashed away. In the face of this sudden attack from this Tao tool, Yi Shiwen did not seem to be at a disadvantage at all. The moment Yi Shiwen smashed the pterosaur away, on the other side, a huge world formed by the myriad worlds diagram finally directly smashed down. "Break for me!" Yi Shiwen roared. Before the world crashed down and destroyed his demon army, the Avicii sword in his hand made a clanging sound. The sword light soared into the sky and instantly tore through the blood-red sword light. It directly blasted into the falling world. Countless illusionary creatures were directly annihilated. After that, the entire world was pierced through. In the end, the entire world began to rumble and explode. It was as if the real world was collapsing inch by inch. From afar, it looked very terrifying, as if the end of the world had really arrived. The sword light's momentum did not diminish, and it pierced through the world. After destroying the world, it directly pierced through the sky, and swept in front of the myriad worlds diagram. The tool spirit of the myriad worlds diagram had an extremely ugly look on his face. Although the attack just swept past him, he was not directly hit, but if it was not for the protection of the myriad worlds diagram, just the aftermath of the attack would have been enough to seriously injure him. The power of the Avicii sword was really getting more and more terrifying. Unlike the pterosaur, the myriad worlds diagram had really fought with Yi Shiwen, and also with the Avicii sword. But at that time, Yi Shiwen was not this terrifying. Even with the time robe, the Avicii sword could only barely contend with him. At most, it could only be said to be able to barely delay him and the Sky Splitter. It was not a big deal at all. It was not a real threat. At most, it was an annoying reptile. But now, Yi Shiwen single-handedly defeated the Sword of Domination. Not to mention that he snatched the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand, killed Mahasvara and the others, and severely injured the Sky Splitter. The Avicii sword was also stronger than before. Even though it was also a Tao tool, he could clearly feel how terrifying the Avicii sword had become. After devouring the Tianqi Emperor sword, his strength had increased by more than a little. Just this sword alone made him feel as if he had been seriously injured. His expression couldn't be any uglier. No wonder the Sky Splitter spear had warned him to be careful in his message. This guy's growth was really too fast. This time, he could not let him go, otherwise no one would be able to deal with him in the future. Die! The myriad worlds diagram roared, and a terrifying aura shot up to the sky, as if it was going to destroy the world. In an instant, thousands of volcanoes erupted at the same time, and in the void, a terrible pattern appeared, spreading out in circles, and crushing towards Yi Shiwen in a grandiose manner. This was the power of a Tao tool. After making up its mind to eliminate Yi Shiwen, it did not hold back at all. Once it attacked, the sky was full of power, rolling and rolling. In the face of the myriad worlds diagram, Yi Shiwen did not hesitate at all. He directly broke through, and directly rushed up. Clang! The sword light of the Avicii sword rose against the wind, directly growing more than 10,000 feet, instantly piercing through the galaxy, and blasting towards the myriad worlds diagram. Yi Shiwen's sword light and the infinite world of the myriad worlds diagram could easily destroy the existence of an ordinary peak quasi-emperor. At this time, they directly collided. Rumble! A violent explosion was triggered, instantly bursting out. This kind of stalemate only lasted for a moment, and Yi Shiwen's sword light did not slow down, breaking through everything. Chapter 2903. The Avicii sword's sword radiance continued to exert its power. It did not stop because of the initial collision. It did not restrain itself, nor did it show any signs of a lack of momentum. The sword radiance directly tore through everything, including the defense of the myriad worlds diagram. It directly blasted into the myriad worlds diagram. Hong long long long. A series of explosions sounded directly in the myriad worlds diagram. Many people only saw that the supreme myriad worlds diagram began to shake violently. Although all the attacks were blocked by the myriad worlds diagram, the myriad worlds diagram's tool spirit's face was still pale. It was difficult for ordinary attacks to hurt it, because no matter what kind of attack it was, it would be absorbed by the myriad worlds diagram. Was there anything more inclusive than a world? However, Yi Shiwen's attack almost exceeded the limits of what the myriad worlds diagram could contain and endure. It instantly injured the tool spirit. At this time, Yi Shiwen had already reopened a considerable part of the Celestial Clan's defense. He had already killed his way to the other end of the Celestial Clan's defense. Without these Dao instruments to lead the way, the remaining Celestial Clan was not Yi Shiwen's opponent at all. They were directly pierced through. With Yi Shiwen as the leader of the Demon Clan's great formation, its power was infinite and invincible. Damn it! The myriad worlds diagram chased after Yi Shiwen. Like the Sword of Domination, it did not directly attack the Demon Clan's army because there was no need. As long as Yi Shiwen was dead, they would naturally be useless. If they were all dead, but Yi Shiwen was still alive, then there would be no point at all. At the same time, the Pterosaur and the Sword of Domination also began to encircle and intercept him. The three Dao instruments with all their strength had also caused a lot of trouble for Yi Shiwen. None of them were Yi Shiwen's opponent in a one-on-one fight. However, at this time, after suffering from Yi Shiwen's attack, they would not choose to fight one-on-one. On the contrary, they would join forces. The three great Dao instruments together, coupled with the other Celestial Clan experts on the side, brought a lot of trouble to Yi Shiwen. In fact, if Yi Shiwen's Demon Clan army did not contain the Celestial Clan army, Yi Shiwen would even have to face the encirclement of the Celestial Clan army. Although the Celestial Clan army could not threaten Yi Shiwen, they could delay Yi Shiwen's footsteps. At that time, Yi Shiwen might really be trapped and killed. This was also the fundamental reason why he released the Demon Clan army. It could hold a considerable amount of the Celestial Clan army for him. It could hold a considerable amount of the Celestial Clan army. But even so, Yi Shiwen was still in trouble. With the three great Dao artifacts as the main force, many of the Tian Clan experts firmly held him back. 1 or 2 of these attacks were not a problem, but after 8 or 10 of them, they would become a huge threat. Moreover, Yi Shiwen also felt that other terrifying auras were awakening. They might not necessarily be Dao tools, but it might be some extremely terrifying old monster that had been hiding for many years. Or it might also be some means that had been hiding for many years. After all, there were so many sovereign emperors in the Tian clan. Other than themselves, no one else knew about their hidden method. At the same time, it was extremely terrifying. From time to time, there would be some astonishing attacks coming out from the depths of the Celestial Clan. Every time, a large portion of the demon clan army would be taken away. There was even one time where Yi Shiwen was almost hit. Even Yi Shiwen would be severely injured by that kind of attack. Fortunately, this kind of attack was clearly taboo and could not be used consecutively. It could only be used from time to time, otherwise Yi Shiwen would probably be left here forever. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen could not help but rejoice. Fortunately, he did not choose to barge in. The Celestial Clan had too many methods, who did not have a trump card. There were all sorts of methods that could truly threaten the Emperor. Although they would have to pay a huge price every time they used it, this was also the key to the survival of the Emperor's inheritances. Even if they became emperors later on, they would not dare to act recklessly because of the existence of such methods. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen could not help but speed up his breakthrough. He did not want to get entangled with those people at all, and directly rushed out. With Yi Shiwen's speed and strength, if he did not want to get entangled, and the Demon Clan army was holding back the Celestial Clan army, then almost no one could stop him. Very quickly, Yi Shiwen had already killed his way out of the Celestial Clan's encirclement. He had already reached the outermost perimeter, and saw the allied forces of the various races that were already fighting with the Celestial Clan. He understood that they were here to pick him up. He immediately used the demon banner to collect the Demon Clan army. Then, he spread his demon wings and activated his fastest speed. In an instant, he appeared at the border between the two armies. Damn it, how could he escape? Trash, you are all trash. It's over, how could he escape? The matter of Yi Shiwen escaping immediately caused the entire Celestial Clan to be shocked and angry. This time, in order to deal with Yi Shiwen, it could be said that they had gone all out. Not to mention the fact that they had mobilized the entire army, they had even paid a huge price to revive the Tao artifact and even used some taboo method. But even so, in the end, they were still unable to stop Yi Shiwen. This was simply a kind of humiliation, even more humiliation than the allied forces felt at the beginning. Back then, the Mahasvara celestial race had only been able to take advantage of the time difference and escape before the true elites of the allied army could even react. At most, they were a little annoyed. But even so, they still achieved the title of the strongest person in the Great Freedom Heaven. But as for Yi Shiwen, he had pierced through the encirclement of the Celestial Clan army with his own strength. In the layers of encirclement of the Celestial Clan army, he had directly pierced a way out and slipped away under their noses. This situation was not the same as the previous situation in the Great Freedom Heaven. Could not be compared at all. But at this time, it was too late to make a move. Yi Shiwen had already escaped, and the ancestral dragon seal and phoenix robe of the allied forces were also rushing from all over at an astonishing speed. Obviously, they were rushing to help Yi Shiwen out. Even if they caught up, it was useless. It was impossible to kill Yi Shiwen. They could only watch Yi Shiwen's figure disappear in front of them. On the other side, the Fire Dragon Supreme and others didn't feel that Yi Shiwen could escape and come back. He really escaped back. Moreover, the most important thing is that he escaped without a scratch. This time, the title of the world's most powerful person will change. Fire Dragon Lord said with an incredulous look on his face. He had seen countless brave people in his life. But to be so brave to this extent, probably only the Qin Emperor could do so many years ago. Could it be that this kid is the next imperial monarch? If so, then he would also be very happy. Since he led the Fire Dragon Palace to betray the Dragon Island, he could only be regarded as the side of the human clan. Naturally, he was very happy that there would be another emperor among the human clan. The stronger the human clan was, the more benefits he would get. Not to mention that Yi Shiwen was a person who had a relationship with the Fire Dragon Palace and the martial sect. Previously, he chose to help Yi Shiwen once. Maybe he would receive an unexpected, amazing return in the future. Beside him, there were 7 or 8 equally tyrannical powerhouses who could grab the stars and the moon and crush the world. At this time, they were also looking at each other and gave up fighting with the experts of the Heavenly Clan. There was a look of complete disbelief on their faces. Are you kidding me? This is simply a monster. He actually came back. Originally, everyone only made the decision to support him. In fact, many people still felt that it was impossible for Yi Shiwen to escape with his own strength in the layers of encirclement. That was why they said to support him. They didn't expect that in fact, they only held back a part of the Heavenly Clan's strength. They didn't help much at all. Yi Shiwen dug a way out with his own strength. Without waiting for them to think too much, Yi Shiwen had already rushed out of the encirclement of the Heavenly Clan and arrived at the camp of the Allied forces. Before they could say a word to Yi Shiwen, they saw Yi Shiwen's figure flash and disappeared in front of everyone. There was only one sentence left in their ears. Seniors, Yi Shiwen will remember the kindness of helping me today. If there is a chance in the future, I will definitely repay it. However, I don't have time to catch up with seniors now. I am in a hurry to kill DNI. Wait for me to come back. As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, someone saw that his figure had already appeared in the space crack and jumped in. Almost immediately, the entire space channel disappeared without a trace as Yi Shiwen withdrew the power that was maintaining it. Everything seemed as if it had never happened, and Yi Shiwen seemed as if he had never appeared. The experts of the Allied forces looked at each other. At this time, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I am in a hurry to kill DNI. If one didn't know better, they would think that he was going to catch a bus. Who was DNI? Although he was a younger generation, who dared to look down on him now? Not to mention that he might achieve cultivation in the future, he was already a great trouble now. He was a super expert among the quasi-emperors. It was one thing to be defeated by Yi Shiwen, but it didn't mean that everyone had the same strength as him. If they wanted to encircle and kill DNI, even if they got the news, they had to be careful and bring along Dao tools to have a chance of success. Yi Shiwen's attitude was like buying groceries on his way home from work, and he said that he would solve it for them. It really made these top experts smile bitterly. It's not that I don't understand, but the world is changing too fast. It's really not our fault. Chapter 2904. Yi Shiwen rushed into the passageway. Without the support of his spiritual power, the passageway soon began to collapse. He rushed out of the passageway in the next moment and returned to the abyss. By then, the battle had also come to an end. Without Mahasvara and the others holding the fort, the remaining celestial fighters were no match for Yimo. They were quickly slaughtered and fled in all directions, not to mention that Yi Qianqian and the Hidden King were there to help them. Although Yi Qianqian and the Hidden King couldn't help much against the Great Freedom Heavens, they were enough to kill the ordinary experts of the Celestial Clan. Yi Shiwen flashed and appeared in front of them. Did you catch up? Yimo asked. He had also seen Yi Shiwen rush out of the passageway. He wasn't too worried about Yi Shiwen. With Yi Shiwen's current strength, no one could do anything to him. I let the Sky Splitter Spear escape. Yi Shiwen briefly explained how he had broken into the Celestial Clan's camp. The Hidden King was completely scared. He had broken into the Celestial Clan's camp and still managed to break out. Yes, he had broken out. He wasn't like the Great Freedom Heavens, who took advantage of the time difference and retreated before the Allied forces could mobilize much strength. Yi Shiwen had directly broken out of the Celestial Clan's army. This was a completely different concept. From now on, the title of the Great Freedom Heavens would probably change to someone else. Some people still had doubts about the title of the Great Freedom Heavens as the world's #1 expert. However, there were also some people who were almost on par with the Great Freedom Heavens. However, there was no such problem for Yi Shiwen. The Great Freedom Heavens, the explosive flame ruthless king, and the cold moon star monarch had all been killed by Yi Shiwen. The three of them together with 2 Dao tools were still no match for him. Unless the emperor was revived, his title as the world's #1 expert would be stable. After the pale face of the hidden king, an excited expression appeared on his face. Yi Shiwen's strength had improved a little too fast. He had reached an unprecedented level in such a short period of time. With the world's #1 expert as the leader, it was impossible for the hidden alliance not to develop. Yi Shiwen was the current leader of the secret alliance. However, he had single-handedly established the secret valley as its core. Therefore, he had always been concerned about the development of the secret alliance because of this. On the contrary, Yi Qianqian's complexion was very calm. She was indifferently looking at Yi Shiwen from the side. There was a bit of pride in her eyes. This man who could go to heaven and earth and make the world tremble was her man. Tsk tisk. Yimo couldn't help but click his tongue in amazement. Yi Shiwen had killed the 3 experts of the Great Freedom Heavens. However, he had been able to kill his way through the heavenly race's main camp. So, he had a whole new level of respect for Yi Shiwen. You are really going to defy the heavens now, but luckily you left early. If you chose to go deep into the Tian clan's camp, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to come out either. Without the monarch overseeing the Tian clan's camp, the deterrent power has indeed decreased by more than 1 level, but you have to understand that they have a lot of methods, and the ones you can see are just a handful. Yimo himself had fought with the Demon King in the past, so he was very clear about the methods of these monarchs. It was beyond the imagination of a quasi-emperor. Unless Yi Shiwen could become a monarch one day, it would be impossible for him to go back and forth and turn the Tian clan's camp into a sieve. What about you guys, did you catch an ID? Yi Shiwen asked. When he came back, the battle here was already coming to an end, but he didn't see an ID. I let him run away. He ran away from the beginning, and he didn't have the slightest desire to fight. We were held up by these Tian clan. Yimo squinted his eyes and said. There was a bit of frightening killing intent in his eyes. After suffering a few losses, this kid's reaction was even sharper than a monkey's. He refused to fight at all, and didn't give me the slightest chance. Yimo was also a little annoyed. Unfortunately, Yi Shiwen was held up by the Great Freedom Heavens and others at that time. Otherwise, he could have killed NID in one breath. It's okay, even if I let him go, so what? Yi Shiwen crossed his arms in front of his chest, and his tone was full of confidence. In the past, he did not have much confidence in competing with D&I to see who would be the first to enter the Emperor realm. However, he was completely different now, as if he had been reborn. No matter what, where can he escape to? For the next period of time, we will continue to search for his whereabouts. If possible, it is better to kill him as soon as possible, Yi Shiwen said. And yes. Yimo nodded. The existence of an ID really made people feel uneasy. Originally, a junior who was about to become an emperor would not have been able to put so much pressure on everyone. However, the various races did not have a single sovereign emperor holding down the fort. The only sovereign emperor that they knew might still be alive was an enemy, not one of their own. It was like a sharp sword hanging over their heads. It could fall at any time and place. The news of Yi Shiwen barging into the Tian clan's camp and killing his way out quickly spread out, because there were simply too many witnesses. It was unknown how many elite experts among the allied forces of the various races had witnessed it with their own eyes. Yi Shiwen had single-handedly beaten several fully awakened Tao tools to the point that they couldn't do anything about it. He had carved a way out in front of them. How terrifying was this? Yi Shiwen really killed them all? How is this possible? Countless people couldn't believe it at first, and they couldn't believe it at all. Is he going to defy the natural order? Even Great Freedom Heaven can't do this, right? This news can't be wrong. Many people saw it at that time, and there was news from inside the Tian clan that even the original number 1 master, Great Freedom Heaven, died in his hands. Explosive Flame Ruthless King and Cold Moon Star Lord also died in his hands. The fact that Yi Shiwen had broken into the Heavenly Race's main camp and killed his way back and forth wasn't shocking enough. However, the fact that Yi Shiwen had killed the Great Freedom Heavenly King made people feel that Yi Shiwen possessed unimaginable strength. Great Freedom Heaven himself was a huge benchmark. He was the world's number 1. Even if some people didn't want to admit it, they had to admit that even if he was not the world's number 1, he was one of the strongest masters under the Monarch realm. Explosive Flame Ruthless King and Cold Moon Star Lord were also among the ranks of these strongest masters. Now that they were killed by Yi Shiwen in one breath, there was no doubt that Yi Shiwen's strength had surpassed them by a lot. Suddenly, the title of the world's strongest person fell on Yi Shiwen's shoulders. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was much less controversial than the Great Freedom Heaven. Great Freedom Heaven had broken into the headquarters of the allied forces of the various clans. However, Yi Shiwen had killed his way back and forth. This was a completely different concept. In addition, he had killed 3 top masters in a row. This made his reputation extremely resounding. In the eyes of most people, the title of the world's number 1 was more worthy of it. This matter became more and more intense during this period of time. In particular, the higher-ups of various clans were pushing behind the scenes. Yi Shiwen's name had spread to the heavens at an astonishing speed. After being suppressed by the Heavenly Clan for so long, even the title of the world's number 1 had been snatched away. The foundation of this title was formed on top of their humiliation. Now that they had finally regained some ground, how could they not work hard to publicize it? Even if many people had a grudge against Yi Shiwen, they also knew that this was the most important time, especially since this matter was too exciting. It could strengthen the hearts of some originally wavering clans and forces, and prevent them from joining the side of the Heavenly Clan. Otherwise, the Heavenly Clan would become the trend of the general trend, and the situation would be irreversible. Yi Shiwen himself didn't know about this matter, because he had been exploring some battlefields in the abyss, looking for natural treasures, and searching for the whereabouts of the Inverse Emperor. Although he found a lot of treasures along the way, he couldn't find the whereabouts of the Inverse Emperor. This was the most regretful thing for Yi Shiwen. However, the harvest of this trip was still great. Not only did Yi Mo rush to the peak of Quasi-Emperor, but Yi Shiwen also rushed to the late stage of Quasi-Emperor. His strength had completely surpassed Great Freedom Heaven. Even Yi Qianqian had finally entered the realm of ordinary peak of Quasi-Emperor. She was only slightly weaker than Yi Mo, and the Hidden King had entered the middle stage of Quasi-Emperor. This speed could not be said to be slow. It should be known that in the Quasi-Emperor realm, it was common for each realm to improve by hundreds of thousands of years. To be able to complete such an amazing transformation in such a short time was still beyond Yi Shiwen's expectations. It could be said that the harvest was quite abundant. Yi Shiwen and the others were not the only ones who had harvested in this abyss. Although he was the strongest and had also taken the most essence of this abyss, the others had more or less obtained a lot of benefits. Both the Heavenly Clan and the allied forces of various clans had entered the abyss, and all of them had more or less improved. For a time, the strength of both the Heavenly Clan and the allied forces of various clans had shown explosive growth. However, in this abyss, fierce battles were unfolding all the time. Both sides would fight to the death whenever they met. Moreover, those who entered were some top experts, and a large number of elite experts from both sides had died here. There were even more rising stars who had obtained some fortuitous encounters, and their strength had suddenly skyrocketed. After confirming that the Inverse Emperor had definitely left, Yi Shiwen decided to return to the Hidden Alliance. He wanted to completely digest the harvest this time, especially the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand. If he could completely refine it, then his strength would increase by a level, especially when he used the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. With the dark Bodhi divine hand in hand, the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist had increased by more than a little. It was simply earth-shaking. When Yi Shiwen returned to the Hidden Alliance, he only knew that the legend about him in the myriad heavens had gone completely crazy. Chapter 2905. The legend of Yi Shiwen being the strongest person in the world had become more and more intense during this period of time. Especially under the promotion of the Allied forces, Yi Shiwen's name had begun to spread from the Allied forces to some remote places. In less than 20 years, Yi Shiwen's prestige had already spread to all the worlds under the control of the Allied forces of the various races. Even in some remote worlds, there were people secretly spreading about Yi Shiwen's deeds. Some people walked in the continent, making Yi Shiwen's reputation more and more resounding. The Allied forces obviously intended to shape Yi Shiwen into a model, pushing him to become a model like Great Carefree Heaven in the past. Great Carefree Heaven could become famous in the world in a short period of time. How could it be possible without the help of the celestial race? Both sides had been fighting for a long time. It was no longer a simple competition of the number of masters. It was a battle of wits and courage to destroy the opponent's fighting spirit. However, the consequence of doing so was that if this model was killed, it would be a great blow to the morale of the Allied forces. Great Freedom Heaven had been killed by Yi Shiwen in front of so many people. This was a huge blow to the morale of the celestial race's side. The self-confidence and pride that they had accumulated on Great Freedom Heaven's side had vanished in an instant. So, they had shifted to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen suddenly seemed to have become the benchmark of the celestial race. Yi Shiwen was always in the eye of the storm. Yi Shiwen didn't know how many of them were really flattering him, and how many of them were planning to kill him with flattery. However, he didn't care. The so-called killing by flattery could only be killed when the person being flattered didn't have the strength. However, Yi Shiwen was worthy of the name. He didn't know if there was anyone stronger than Great Carefree Heaven. However, he had a few Tao tools with him, so he could definitely bear this title. It was not an undeserved reputation. Since that was the case, there was no need to talk about praising him to death. Moreover, the advantage of doing this was that since he had already become a great hero against the heavens and a role model of a celebrity, then in the future, even if those who disliked him dared to attack him, they could only attack him from behind. They definitely wouldn't dare to attack him directly. In this way, Yi Shiwen didn't know how much trouble would be saved. He could concentrate on his cultivation. He hadn't been able to capture D&I and kill him earlier. This had made him feel a sense of crisis. Was God really helping him? But now that D&I was at this stage, he had to hurry up and increase his strength. Then, even if D&I got the Tao, he had to be able to fight back. Now that his cultivation had reached the peak of the late Quasi-Emperor realm, he was only a step away from the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm. At that time, he could start preparing for the tribulation. He didn't know how much time he would have to spend on this step, not to mention the final step of attaining the Tao. The time he might have to spend on this step could be calculated in astronomical figures. Without external help, he could only slowly improve his strength in closed-door cultivation. Before that, he decided to complete the sacrificial refining of the dark Bodhi divine hand and the devil worship. At that time, he could give the devil worship to Yi Qianqian to protect herself. The dark Bodhi divine hand could greatly improve his strength. This was the only way to improve his strength in a short period of time. The Hidden King was handling the matters of the Hidden Alliance. There was no need for him to do anything. Even if there were some disharmony, Yi Mo was there. With Yi Mo's strength, it was too easy to suppress those ambitious people. Not to mention that Yi Shiwen had become the world's #1. Everyone in the Hidden Alliance had willingly surrendered. No one was dissatisfied anymore. Even those emperor inheritances didn't have the world's number one to be the leader. This was especially true after Yi Shiwen had become the strongest person in the world. Many forces and experts had rushed over to seek shelter with him. The various forces that had been very resistant to the secret alliance had started to waver, especially after they had seen Yi Shiwen continuously bringing back huge benefits for the secret alliance. This had allowed the secret alliance's strength to increase tremendously. After the disciples of the Hidden Alliance had more or less obtained some benefits, they couldn't sit still anymore. Having such a powerful leader was also a huge benefit for them, especially for some individual cultivators. It was very difficult for individual cultivators to survive in the world. Unless they had some fortuitous encounters, it would be very difficult for them to obtain high-level cultivation techniques and cultivation resources by themselves. Moreover, even if they wanted to join a king's sect or an emperor's inheritance, they wouldn't be willing to accept experts who had already formed their own system. They would rather believe in the experts that they had nurtured themselves. Whether it was in terms of cultivation system or credibility, it was much higher. The Hidden Alliance was the only force that had made a name for itself. It was still recruiting talents from the outside. After all, the Hidden Alliance had only been established for a short period of time. Even if it had the Hidden Valley as its core, it was still too weak compared to those emperors' inheritance. It had no other choice but to frantically recruit people to improve its own strength in a short period of time. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had said that only experts and elites could be recruited. Those who were weak could not be recruited unless they had amazing talent. This was to prevent the income from being substandard. In that case, it would be better not to have any. Originally, some people had expressed disdain for the Hidden Alliance's attitude of preferring nothing over substandard. It was already a problem whether anyone would be willing to join. Yet, they were still being picky. Now that Yi Shiwen had become the most powerful person in the world according to the official propaganda, his appeal had greatly increased. Many people who were still wavering had directly come to him, and the rule that Yi Shiwen had set had a place to use. The current Hidden Alliance was like a huge whirlpool. It had absorbed many experts to join it. There was bound to be a mix of good and bad people, or people with ulterior motives. However, these were all small problems. It could only be slowly digested in the future. With Yi Mo in charge, these people could not overturn the heavens. Yi Mo didn't enter into a state of closed-door training while Yi Shiwen was in closed-door training. He had already reached the same realm as the Great Freedom Heavens. However, he had said that he was still very close to the Emperor realm. The difference was huge. He still needed to accumulate enough foundation before he could attempt a breakthrough. Otherwise, he might really die in the Great Calamity. Even Freedom Heavens, who had cultivated to the peak of the quasi-emperor realm many years ago, still did not dare to attempt a breakthrough. He was afraid that he would be struck to death. Therefore, he was not in a hurry. Yi Shiwen could only be non-committal about this because he had not truly reached the peak. Therefore, he did not know whether he would have such a foundation after he cultivated to the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. However, judging from the current situation, it would not be a problem for him to far surpass Yi Mo. This time, Yi Shiwen chose to go into closed-door training in the Hidden Alliance. This was also to prevent any accident. Who knew if the heavenly race would lose their minds and directly attack the Hidden Alliance? If he was not around, it would be very difficult for Yi Mo to resist the heavenly race army alone. After all, once the heavenly race army was mobilized, it would definitely be a thunderous attack. If one or two top experts were dispatched to delay Yi Mo, the remaining experts of the Hidden Alliance would probably be completely annihilated. Currently, apart from Yi Shiwen, Yi Mo, and the Hidden King, there was not even a single quasi-emperor in the Hidden Alliance. Yi Qianqian would also go into closed-door training with Yi Shiwen. Together with him, they would refine the giant devil ship. When that time came, they would have a Dao tool to protect themselves. Then, they would be able to go anywhere in the world. The closed-door training grounds in the depths of the Hidden Alliance were surrounded by various enchantments. During this period of time, Emo had used a great method to arrange these enchantments. These were all Emperor-level enchantments that the Demon King had used in the past. Although the Demon King did not specialize in this aspect, it was still far superior to ordinary quasi-emperors. This was also the source of most Emperor-level enchantments. Only a very small portion of them were actually arranged by the Emperor. Most of them were arranged by the later generations according to the techniques left behind by the Emperor. Among them, there were strong and weak ones. The enchantments that were arranged by the real Emperor level were the most terrifying. Not only did they contain the Tao of the Emperor level, but they also contained the skills and techniques left behind by the Emperor level. Under normal circumstances, they would be hidden inside and would only awaken under certain circumstances. However, once awakened, they could even pose a threat to the Emperor level. It was equivalent to the Emperor level awakening and launching an all-out attack. Ordinary creatures could not injure the Emperor level. However, it would be completely different if it was another Emperor level. This was the reason why the inheritance of the Emperor level had existed since ancient times. Even the Emperor level would not be willing to provoke them. Although the enchantment that Emo had arranged was slightly inferior, it was still extremely powerful. It could be said that it was currently the most powerful secret territory in the Hidden Alliance. In the future, it would also become the place where the higher-ups of the Hidden Alliance would go into closed-door training. In the secret territory, Yi Shiwen and Yi Qianqian were sitting cross-legged on a cloud bed. The giant devil ship in the sky erupted with waves of pitch-black devil aura as it struggled to leave. However, how could Yi Shiwen give it the opportunity to do so? A huge dark Bodhi divine hand was firmly holding onto the giant devil ship. After a full 30 years, Yi Shiwen had thoroughly refined the dark Bodhi divine hand. With the experience of refining the Avicii sword and the time robe, and the help of the two Dao tools, it was undoubtedly much easier for Yi Shiwen to refine the dark Bodhi divine hand with his current strength. It could be said that he was very familiar with this task. The rest of the time was used to help Yi Qianqian refine the giant devil ship. Although the giant devil ship was damaged, it was still a Dao tool after all. It was still not easy to refine it. Yi Shiwen had to completely erase the imprints of other people, especially the Emperor level of the devil race. Then, he had to brand Yi Qianqian's divine sense in it. This required a lot of time and effort. Chapter 2906. The dark Bodhi divine hand was firmly holding onto the demonic ship, not allowing it to break free. It was very difficult for the demonic ship to break free. Yi Shiwen's magic power continued to pour into the ship, and the devil battleship started to struggle fiercely in the beginning. However, it gradually calmed down. After a few more years, the demonic ship finally stopped struggling. Yi Qianqian stretched out her hand and grabbed the demonic ship. She quickly absorbed it into her body. Yi Shiwen breathed a sigh of relief. In the end, he had refined the demonic ship. With the protection of this demonic warship, it could be said that Yi Qianqian had become one of the strongest cultivators of this generation. There were not many who dared to say that they could suppress her. As long as the Emperor did not descend personally, she would have no problem protecting herself. Ever since he knew that his opponent was Mingdi, Yi Shiwen had been worried about her safety. He was definitely Mingdi's first target. However, Yi Qianqian, who had obtained the inheritance of the Lord of Underworld, was also one of Mingdi's targets. Without a Dao weapon to protect herself, the difference between a quasi-emperor and an emperor was too great. She would not be able to withstand a single blow. They were on two completely different levels of life. They could not be mentioned in the same breath. After refining the demonic ship, Yi Shiwen came out of seclusion. Although he was already at the peak of the late quasi-emperor realm, it was not easy to take that step. If he did not want to waste time and effort, he could only look for a fortuitous encounter. The news of Yi Shiwen's coming out of seclusion quickly spread throughout the allied forces and the celestial race. This was because such a person was too dangerous. Yi Shiwen had broken into the celestial camp alone and entered and left freely. This undoubtedly stimulated the sensitive nerves of many people. In the era when the emperor did not appear, he was equivalent to a strategic weapon. Especially on the side of the celestial race, they were completely nervous. No one could deal with such an existence, especially when it came to making money. They had lost the great freedom heavens, the cold moon star lord, and the explosive flame ruthless king, 3 peak quasi-emperors in succession. For a time, the number of high-level experts of the allied forces was somewhat out of balance. Therefore, Yi Shiwen's appearance instantly made the celestial race nervous. The high-level leaders of the allied forces naturally attached great importance to this matter. Yi Shiwen had just come out of closed-door training, and he had already been appointed as the deputy alliance chief. In view of his origin and background, it was already beyond everyone's expectations that he would be appointed as the deputy alliance chief. Yi Shiwen didn't have any opinion on this. The position of deputy chief was just a nominal position. After all, the structure of the entire alliance was a group of people. No one could suppress the others. It didn't matter if it was the chief or the deputy chief. The only difference was that their words carried more weight. In order to balance the various sovereign lord legacies and the Regis sects, nothing was going to be easy. During this period of time, taking advantage of the fact that Yi Shiwen had caught the Tian clan off guard and caused the Tian clan to suffer a lot of losses, the allied forces of the various races took advantage of the situation to launch a counterattack and recover some of the lost land. Several fierce battles also broke out between the Tian clan camp and the allied forces' headquarters, especially when Yi Shiwen broke into the Tian clan's camp. In order to support Yi Shiwen, the allied forces of the various races and the Tian clan army fought a great battle. After a chaotic battle, they retreated to each other. Basically, both sides suffered losses, but the celestial race, who had been beaten senseless, suffered greater losses, and the allied forces of the various races had the upper hand. However, neither side had the decisive strength, and there was no way to achieve a decisive victory. They could only continue this stalemate. Every day, every minute, every second was like a flesh mill, cruelly strangling the elites of both sides. In order to compete for the leadership of the myriad heavens, the celestial race couldn't give up. The allied forces of the various races also didn't want to crawl under the feet of the celestial race again and be their slaves for generations, so it was even more impossible for them to stop at this time. The contradiction between the two sides could be said to be irresolvable, and they could only fight with all their strength. Yi Shiwen came out of seclusion, but he didn't return to the allied forces' headquarters first. On the contrary, he silently crossed more than half of the myriad heavens, and directly headed towards the sealed place of the celestial race. He wanted to find out what happened inside and why did they fall. Of course, most importantly, he also wanted to check the seal to see if it was completely scrap. Yi Shiwen still had some guesses in his heart. It was probably not completely scrapped, otherwise it was possible that the sovereign lords of the celestial race had returned to the myriad heavens. And now, at most, it was the existence of the great freedom heavens, which meant that the seal of the past was still effective, and there was a force that was preventing these sovereign lords from returning. If the sovereign lords of the celestial race returned, then everything that the allied forces were doing now would become incomparably ridiculous, because it would be of no use at all. Yi Shiwen didn't alarm anyone, nor did he tell anyone. He just walked all the way by himself. He walked all the way and comprehended all the way. He felt that his path seemed to be broken, or perhaps he had reached a limit. He was now stronger than the great freedom heavens, but he was still far from the Sovereign Lord level. Every step forward would be an unprecedented realm, and every step would be very difficult. He was laying the foundation, but if he wasn't careful, it might turn into laying the foundation for the rest of his life. He could already feel that there was a wall in front of him, and the path ahead was broken. Having reached this stage, no one could give him guidance. Perhaps he was walking on the loneliest path that no one had ever walked before or since. Even the legends of many sovereign lords from ancient times to the present didn't seem to have such a record. He wanted to make a breakthrough, go further, and create another path above the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. This in itself was crazy enough to think about. Perhaps I've reached the end of this path in this life. It's too difficult to go further. Yi Shiwen didn't have much confidence in himself in the end. He wanted to borrow the records of the various sovereign lords, and see how the sovereign lords had passed through this stage. Perhaps it would be meaningful for him to learn from them. However, that would be before he had attained the Tao. He hadn't reached that point yet, and it was already difficult for him to proceed. There was no path ahead, and he was walking on a different path from everyone else. So, he was standing in front of everyone now. There was no path ahead, and it meant that no one had ever walked this path before. There was such a law between the heavens and the earth. Once a certain path had been taken by someone, then it would be easier for the people behind to take this path. Ever since the birth of the first acquired god, the path of gods had gradually become clear. Every step of the way had its own rules, and there were standards for reference. However, there weren't any sovereign lords yet. Although many sovereign lords had been born, they hadn't reached that point yet. He was now standing at the forefront of all the cultivators, exploring that path. It was pitch black in front of him, and he couldn't see anything. It was as if he was walking on the edge of a cliff, and he could fall and be smashed to pieces if he wasn't careful. Perhaps there had been people who had reached this point since ancient times, but had there really been people who had broken through? And now it was his turn. Would he be stuck here forever, and be unable to go further? Or would he open up a new path, and open up a new world? I want to step on an unprecedented path, and I want to change it. Yi Shiwen thought about it day and night. His thoughts were undergoing amazing changes every minute and every second. He began to think about every path he had walked since the beginning of his cultivation. His path of cultivation had basically been learning the Tao of others, and many of them didn't have any system at all. Compared to the elites who had inherited the sovereign lord's inheritance, his learning was even more unsystematic. However, he had relied on various fortuitous encounters and the mysterious space to cultivate to the present. He didn't feel it before, but now that he was standing at his current height, and looking back, his previous path of cultivation was like a skyscraper. It was pulled up from the ground, but it was crooked. However, this kind of crooked skyscraper was towering into the clouds, and it hadn't been blown down by the strong winds. This in itself was a miracle. Yi Shiwen began to correct his previous Tao, from the initial Hotian to Xiantian, and then to the Truth Tao. He moved all the way towards the sealed place of the Tian race, and he didn't deliberately speed up. He was just like a traveler. He knew that this was very important to him. If his previous Tao was not corrected, he would not be able to advance further. He had already reached the limit of this swaying skyscraper. If it continued to tilt, it would inevitably collapse. At this time, he truly understood how important an effective cultivation system was, and how lucky those who had inherited the sovereign lord's inheritance were. It could save countless years of exploration time, and it was simply incomparable to his unorthodox path. Yi Shiwen's speed of correction was extremely fast, especially his previous path of cultivation. Looking back at it from his current height, the situation was already completely different. His speed of correction was getting faster and faster, and his aura was also getting stronger and stronger, as if he was undergoing a kind of rebirth. At his current level, being able to undergo rebirth was an incredible thing in itself. This kind of transformation made him no longer able to hide his figure. Many people saw that Yi Shiwen was undergoing a transformation, becoming stronger and stronger, and becoming purer and purer. Oh my God, he is cutting off his previous Tao, it's like he's ascending to heaven. He is purifying himself, becoming incomparably pure, even purer than a crystal. Is this Yi Shiwen really going to defy the heavens? He's already so strong now, and he's still transforming. Who can control him in the future? There were also many people who were trembling from the bottom of their hearts. They were afraid, especially the masters of the Tian race. They had suffered great losses in the hands of Yi Shiwen several times, and their strength was greatly damaged. They couldn't help but be afraid of Yi Shiwen. What's more, he was actually becoming stronger. Was he really using a cheat? Chapter 2907. Other than cheating, no one could think of any other words to describe this situation. In the beginning, Yi Shiwen still had a purpose to go to the sealed place of the Sky Clan. But later, Yi Shiwen had no goal at all. Or rather, his overall goal was still to go to the sealed place of the Sky Clan. However, he no longer walked in a straight line. Instead, he walked slowly and continued to comprehend along the way. Basically, it could be understood as going wherever he went. Along the way there was too much movement. Because he was mending his own Tao and cutting off his past Tao, Yi Shiwen was completely immersed in his own Tao. Except for the most basic vigilance, he had almost lost his perception of everything else. Many people could see that he had no feeling at all. He was just going with the flow. Wherever his body went, that was where it was. But his aura was still strong. Because of this, no one dared to approach him, even though he seemed to be completely immersed in the ocean of Tao. However, another 20 years had passed. Yi Shiwen was walking faster and faster, but his aura was getting weaker and weaker. It was as if someone had chopped off his body piece by piece. It was extremely strange and terrifying. Unlike before, Yi Shiwen's aura was getting stronger and stronger. It was like a flying dragon soaring into the sky and soaring above the 9 heavens. But now, it seemed as though he was chopping off his own Tao. It was constantly crumbling and collapsing, slowly falling from a quasi-emperor to a god-king, from a god-king to an ordinary god, and even directly falling below the Tao-proving realm. Suddenly, everyone was in an uproar. Even the matter of Yi Shiwen every day attracted more attention than the confrontation between the two camps. It was because the situation was too strange. In the end, a respected old antique who had lived for countless years saw through his situation. He was reshaping his own Tao. What a frightening thing this was. One should know that for a martial artist like Du, the Tao was simply like the bones in the human body. The Tao determined the fundamental shape of a person, and all other martial arts and magical powers were attached to the flesh and blood of the Tao. Only after having the Tao would it be meaningful. Therefore, the more correct one's Tao was, the further one would be able to walk down the path. Cutting off his own Tao was like breaking his own bones, trying to straighten his own bones. How terrifying was this? It required extremely strong willpower, and it wasn't something an ordinary person could do. However, the benefits of doing so were naturally great. Once he succeeded, his future path would be limitless. Many people knew about Yi Shiwen's past. It could be said that it was a hodgepodge. He wasn't like the disciples of the Emperor's inheritance who had advanced step by step. It was already shocking that he could reach this step. No one else could achieve such a thing. Therefore, he understood very well why he was doing this. However, understanding was one thing, but he was still dumbfounded by what he saw. This is the best opportunity. You won't get the chance to kill him in normal times. But it's only possible now. Someone clamored to attack Yi Shiwen. Normally, Yi Shiwen was simply too powerful. He could kill his way through the Tian clan's camp by himself, and even if he used a taboo method, it would still be very difficult to keep him here. Don't forget, he still had 3 Dao tools on him and they were still intact. How could such a person be easily dealt with? That in itself was completely illogical. However, it was different now. Yi Shiwen was actually comprehending the Dao. He was not in the heavily guarded headquarters of the Allied forces or the Hidden Alliance, but he just came out casually. This was simply a godsend for them. It was a good opportunity for Yi Shiwen to attack. If they missed this opportunity, even God wouldn't be able to stand it. Although many people clamored, no one dared to attack Yi Shiwen. Especially at the beginning, Yi Shiwen's aura was constantly getting stronger. Some people didn't want to be outdone and wanted to attack Yi Shiwen. In the end, before Yi Shiwen could do anything, a quasi-emperor was slashed by Yi Shiwen's Avicii sword and automatically came out to protect him. Only then did ordinary people remember that even if he had no consciousness, as long as he still had a Dao tool, he was still one of the most terrifying existences in the world. However, everyone saw Yi Shiwen's aura getting weaker and weaker. He had already fallen from the Dao validation realm. After a few years, he even fell to the transcendent realm. He was already so weak that in the eyes of many people, they might be able to kill Yi Shiwen with a single finger. Suddenly, on a day, Yi Shiwen's body instantly erupted with endless brilliance. Countless treasure lights bloomed on his body, and several Dao tools disintegrated on his body and flew out. Many people exclaimed, wondering what Yi Shiwen was doing. He is pursuing the Dao alone. These Dao tools all have a strong Emperor's Dao. It might not be a problem normally, but if he wants to walk on his own Dao, he has to abandon the influence of these Dao tools. Hence, he separated himself from these Dao tools. That's great. Yi Shiwen is seeking his own death. Originally, he still had Dao tools on him, so we couldn't do anything to him. However, now that he is seeking his own death, he can't blame us for everything. Kill him. Many heavenly clans were roaring. There was a blood feud between Yi Shiwen and the heavenly clan. No one knew how many heavenly clan experts died in his hands. No one knew how many times the heavenly clan's plans had been destroyed by Yi Shiwen. Most importantly, Yi Shiwen had stopped D&I time and time again, which led to D&I not being able to attain Dao until now. Even now, Yi Shiwen had completely overshadowed him. In the past, everyone was guessing, or rather, waiting for D&I to attain Dao. The heavenly clan was waiting, and so was the allied forces. They were all thinking of ways to delay the arrival of this process. But now, everyone's attention seemed to be attracted by Yi Shiwen. He was like the biggest luminous object in the world, completely attracting everyone's attention. No one paid attention to the matter of Emperor Ni anymore. Now was the best time to kill him. If they missed this opportunity, there would be no more. Yi Shiwen walked into a world, and around him, many figures appeared. All of them were peerless experts and had auras that could destroy the heavens and earth. Normally, these people would not dare to appear in front of Yi Shiwen. However, after confirming that even the Dao tools had left Yi Shiwen, they all appeared. Yi Shiwen, today is the day you die. Accept your fate. A massive evil dragon descended from the sky, and on its head stood a middle-aged man. This middle-aged man's face was filled with vicissitudes, and he looked like he had experienced many things. There was a sinister smile on his face. Finally, he could take his revenge. Although his revenge was nothing in Yi Shiwen's eyes. In fact, Yi Shiwen didn't even know that he had killed his friend. However, he had always remembered this hatred until now. Yi Shiwen had charged into the heaven-awakened world. Far too many people had died because of him, and he had thought that he would never have a chance to take revenge in this lifetime. Who would have thought that he would have such an opportunity now? Yi Shiwen was still immersed in his own Dao, and he walked forward step by step. What was different from ordinary people was that he walked in the air, and it looked like he was walking on flat ground. Seeing this scene, many people felt quite shocked. After all, if ordinary people wanted to break free from gravity and fly, they would have to expend magic power. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He did not expend any magic power, and there seemed to be no magic power in his body at all. He had stepped on the nodes of the laws, and he had relied on his understanding of the laws to do this. He had not relied on magic power or true essence to do this. This was the most terrifying thing. To be able to walk in the air by relying on his understanding of the laws meant that his understanding of the laws had reached a shocking level. In fact, even many old antiques would not be able to do this. They could rely on their instincts to float in the air, but it was impossible for them to not expend any magic power. Yi Shiwen seemed to be immersed in his own world, and he did not care about what was happening outside. Yi Shiwen, today is the day you pay your debt. Die. The middle-aged man on the huge, evil dragon roared and pounced at Yi Shiwen. The evil dragon was connected to its master's mind, and it knew the anger in its master's heart. It pounced at Yi Shiwen and opened its mouth, as if it wanted to swallow Yi Shiwen whole. That bloody mouth seemed to be able to swallow the world, and it could destroy the sun, moon, and stars. This was an evil dragon at the peak of the Sage Plain. No one knew when this middle-aged man had captured it and made it his mount. This middle-aged man was also a super expert in the early stage of the King Plane. If this had been any other time, he would not have dared to appear in front of Yi Shiwen. An expert like him was too weak in front of Yi Shiwen. Things were different now. They might still have a fighting chance, but if they missed this opportunity today, they would never have such a chance again. Everyone was guessing that Yi Shiwen's aura and strength would not decrease indefinitely. There would definitely be a day when he would rebound, and that day was not far away. Now was the best time. If they did not make a move now, it would be too late. Most importantly, Yi Shiwen had friends, and those people would be here soon. He would not give them a chance to make a move. Just as that bloody mouth was about to swallow Yi Shiwen moved. He slapped out with his palm. It was a simple, ordinary palm, but it blasted into the dragon's mouth. Chapter 2908. Bang! Yi Shiwen's hand directly inserted into that big bloody mouth. Then, an amazing scene occurred. The dragon's head directly burst open and turned into a rain of blood that filled the sky. It screamed pitifully and directly turned into nothingness. Even its spirit was not left behind. One strike was all it took to kill a dragon at the pinnacle of the Sage Plain. No one knew how he did it. There were no fluctuations of spiritual ether on Yi Shiwen's body. If one closed their eyes, they would not even be able to sense Yi Shiwen's aura. The dragon's aura was everywhere. However, Yi Shiwen had blasted this evil dragon into dregs with just one blow. How did he do it? Many people opened their eyes wide. It seemed that they wanted to see clearly what kind of magical power Yi Shiwen had used. However, they couldn't see what kind of martial arts or magical power Yi Shiwen had used no matter how hard they looked. He just stretched out his hand, and he dismembered a divine lord at the pinnacle of the Sage Plain. Who said that he had no combat power? Who said that he was easy to deal with? Many people suddenly began to curse. In a situation where they could not detect any other traces, they could only confirm it. Yi Shiwen made their hearts beat faster. Who the hell said that Yi Shiwen was easy to deal with? The middle-aged man from the Tian clan retreated again and again, looking at Yi Shiwen in shock. But Yi Shiwen did not seem to care about him at all. He just walked forward step by step and continued on his way. It was as if he was still immersed in his ocean of the Great Path, and no one could wake him up. Yi Shiwen wore a green robe and crossed the void step by step. He looked like an ascetic monk wandering around the world. He was walking a completely different path. The middle-aged man's face was extremely ugly. Because he was frightened by Yi Shiwen. There was a look of unwillingness on his face. He was actually frightened by Yi Shiwen, especially when Yi Shiwen was still in the state of enlightenment. It was really too shameful. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for him to become stronger? He has no Tao implement to protect him now, and this is his weakest moment. If you don't do it now, there will be no chance in the future. The middle-aged man roared. A long spear appeared in his hand, and he pointed it at Yi Shiwen. He was trying to incite everyone to besiege and kill Yi Shiwen. However, at this time, Yi Shiwen, who didn't seem to have the slightest awareness of the outside world and didn't care about what was happening outside, suddenly attacked. In an instant, his entire person disappeared, leaving only an afterimage. Then, he directly attacked, instantly rushing in front of the middle-aged man from the Tian clan. Everyone cried out in alarm. What was Yi Shiwen trying to do? His cultivation had been severed, and his Tao had been reshaped. In this process, he shouldn't have any magical powers. In addition, he didn't even have the Tao tool. What else could he do? But then Yi Shiwen showed his super strong side and smashed his fist on the long spear. This top-grade divine tool level great spear instantly exploded and collapsed. Moreover, Yi Shiwen's punch did not lose any momentum and directly penetrated the front of the middle-aged man from the Tian clan. The Tian clan middle-aged man desperately wanted to resist. He wanted to block Yi Shiwen's punch, but it was useless because he couldn't keep up with Yi Shiwen's punch at all. Bang! With a loud sound, the chest of the middle-aged man from the Tian clan was instantly pierced. In an instant, blood splattered and bone fragments flew everywhere. Yi Shiwen didn't stop, he went one step further. His hands tore open endless golden light. The Tian clan divine king didn't even have time to react and was directly torn apart. Instantly, he couldn't be more dead. The entire world fell into a deathly silence. Everyone's eyes were wide open in utter disbelief. A single punch, just a single punch, and a celestial race god king was instantly killed. Everyone was scared silly. They never thought that it would actually turn out like this. With Yi Shiwen's strength, it wasn't strange for him to kill a divine king in one move. But that was when he was at his peak. He was in the quasi-emperor realm and had a Tao tool. What was strange about killing a divine king in one move? Even killing a quasi-emperor in one move was not news. But now, after severing his own Tao and dispersing his Tao tool, he still had such strength. It was simply a joke. Could it be that he didn't lose his strength at all, and all this was just an act? Seeing Yi Shiwen kill a divine king so easily, everyone couldn't help but doubt. Could it be that they were wrong? Yi Shiwen actually didn't lose his strength, and he didn't sever his Tao? Impossible. We all saw him sever his Tao with our own eyes. How can it not be true? Even if he can hide it from us, can he hide it from everyone in the world? In these past decades, it wasn't just them who had been paying attention. It could be said that all the worlds in the universe had been waiting and paying attention. Many old antiques and old monsters had also been paying attention and had confirmed this matter. Those people were very experienced, they were very cunning, and their vision was very sharp. How could they let Yi Shiwen deceive them? Even though Yi Shiwen had the reputation of being the #1 person in the world, they didn't believe that Yi Shiwen could hide it from everyone. At this moment, Yi Shiwen completely made them doubt whether their guess was true or not. A god king was instantly killed just like that. There were no signs at all. There were no signs at all. It was done just like that. Under Yi Shiwen's feet there was a scarlet mist. Yi Shiwen's body looked particularly tall and straight in that blood mist. It was as if he was an ancient divine mountain standing in front of everyone. He just used his physical body. He just used his physical body to easily kill a matchless divine king. Someone exclaimed. This was because he had suddenly thought of this reason. This was the only reason. In the information of Yi Shiwen's early years, there were indeed reports of Yi Shiwen's physical body being unparalleled. It was just that many people had long forgotten about it, because everyone's attention was already on the Tao treasures that Yi Shiwen possessed. Compared to that, the strength of Yi Shiwen's physical body seemed to be completely meaningless. But it was only now that everyone came to a realization. How was this strong? It was simply sick, all right? Even if ordinary quasi-emperors specialized in the aspect of physical body and cultivated a supreme golden body, they wouldn't dare to say that they could kill a divine king with just their physical body when they had no magic power. In particular, many experts from powerful races such as the Golden Dragon race and the Titan race all began to ask themselves, under the same circumstances, without their physical bodies, could they really kill a divine king with just their physical body? Many quasi-emperors didn't dare to say this. Even if they had their magical powers, and although killing a divine king was nothing, to be able to kill a divine king in an instant was something that even they at their peak could not do. Let alone in such a state. Could he really be some kind of monster? It seemed that Yi Shiwen had too many secrets hidden under that endless halo. They wouldn't have known that Yi Shiwen's physical body was so tyrannical if they didn't have such an opportunity today. This in itself was an incredible thing. You're all a bunch of trash. Are you all going to give up just like that? A young man with a strong body wrapped in a deathly aura spoke up and called everyone trash on the spot. Many people were instantly enraged. Those who dared to come here to kill Yi Shiwen were all powerful cultivators of their generation. They were all beings who dominated a region. The divine master of the Sage Plane was already the lowest level, and there were even many beings of the divine King Plane. These people were all unwilling to lay their hands on Yi Shiwen. But when everyone saw the young man's appearance clearly, their expressions changed drastically. "You're Mingguang," someone even said with a trembling voice. At this moment, everyone was sure that the young man in front of them was Mingguang. He is Mingguang. In the past few decades, his name has been too resounding. It's very rare for the underworld kingdom to have a descendant enter the world for countless years. But in this generation, a young powerhouse has entered the world to cultivate. That's him. He is the youngest lord of the underworld in the underworld kingdom. It is said that he has just awakened for less than 1,000 years, but he has already cultivated all the way to the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. It seems that it won't be long before he can cultivate to the same level as the Mahasvara heaven and become one of the strongest powerhouses in the world. Many people were very clear about the rumors of Mingguang and his achievements. No one knows exactly what his background is. In fact, no one has ever forced him to such an extent. His opponents have always been defeated in one move. Shui Duo said with great emotion. To cultivate to the peak of the quasi-emperor realm in 1,000 years, many people could not help but feel that they had lived in vain. 1,000 years was not even a fraction of their years of cultivation, but it had far surpassed them. How could this not make them feel ashamed? In comparison, Yi Shiwen was not so shocked. Although Yi Shiwen had cultivated to this point in less than 10,000 years, it was enough to shock the world. Yes, some people speculate that in his previous life, he was likely to be a peak of the quasi-emperor realm, an expert even more tyrannical than the realm of freedom. Someone said, now that the realm of freedom had been dead for many years, he had unfortunately become a benchmark in everyone's mouth. It is even possible that the incomplete corpse of the emperor was moved back by the underworld and buried. It is very likely that this is the case. This speculation was naturally extremely shocking. How could it be so easy to find an emperor's corpse? The last time the Sky race obtained an emperor's corpse, it had already turned the world upside down. One could imagine how rare and precious an emperor's corpse was. Everyone was also very clear about how the experts of the underworld came out. Basically, everyone had an ancestor who had been abducted by the underworld to train as their own expert. Although they were very angry, they were also very clear about the inside story. But such a speculation was too shocking. Chapter 2909. The Emperor's corpse was very rare. Even if the Emperor had fallen, it would be protected by the heavenly law. It would not be easily taken away. However, the Netherworld Kingdom had been established for countless years. It was a terrorist organization that had existed long before the distant mythological era. With such a long time and foundation, no one knew whether they really buried the Emperor's corpse in the ground and used a secret method to revive it. Although everyone did not have a good impression of the Netherworld Kingdom, and many people had a blood feud with them. In their ancestors, there had been injured ancestors who were forcibly beheaded and taken away by the Netherworld Kingdom. Every race and every force, as long as they had existed for a long time, seemed to have some intersection with the Netherworld Kingdom. It was just that this kind of intersection was not good. However, they still did not doubt the foundation of the Netherworld Kingdom. However, many people imagined that this was the only way to explain why Ming Guang could cultivate to such a level in just a short period of 1,000 years. It was unprecedented. Naturally, the experts from the Netherworld couldn't be compared to ordinary people. This was because they had already accumulated an unimaginable amount of experience in their previous lives. It was like others were still running at the starting line, but they were simply running from the finishing line. If the time of their cultivation was included in the cultivation time of their previous life, then everything seemed reasonable. This Ming Guang is too strong. Among the current younger generation, probably only the descendants of the ancient celestial courts, Yi Wudi and Kunpeng Demon Master can be compared with him. Many people said. Ming Guang had not been out for many years, but he had already made a name for himself as invincible. In contrast, Yi Wudi's reputation was built up over thousands of years. It was completely incomparable. Regardless of whether it was the flattery of others or his own strength, the fact that he was able to reach this step in such a short period of time showed that he was not simple in the eyes of the crowd. This was especially so since he represented the Netherworld Kingdom, a colossus that was always shrouded in fog. However, when everyone ranked the strongest of the younger generation, they had naturally excluded Yi Shiwen. What a joke! If they included him, would the others still have a way to survive? Whether it was Yi Wudi or Kunpeng, they had fought in succession in the past few years. Their strength had been recognized by everyone. However, they paled in comparison to Yi Shiwen. They could only fight against ordinary peak-level quasi-emperors. They were still far away from peak-level quasi-emperors like Great Freedom Heaven. However, Yi Shiwen could already kill Great Freedom Heaven. They weren't creatures of the same plane at all. Therefore, Yi Shiwen was automatically excluded from the ranks of the younger generation. He was a monster, and couldn't be measured by the logic of ordinary people. They wouldn't take Yi Shiwen into account now. After all, it would be too unfair to the others. Many people cried out in alarm. Could it really be some unknown great world? In normal times, it might be difficult for even one person like Ming Guang to appear in millions of years, let alone a monstrous genius like Yi Shiwen. Once a monstrous genius appeared, he would be an invincible existence that could suppress the current generation. But now, one after another, such monstrous geniuses were born. No one could dominate the world. It could only be said that one could dominate a region. This was unimaginable in all the great eras since ancient times. Such an existence, who had cultivated for less than 1,000 years, made these old antiques, who had cultivated for hundreds of thousands of years, tremble with fear. They didn't dare to look directly into his eyes. There was a great power in his eyes. It was extremely terrifying and looked extremely powerful. He walked towards Yi Shiwen step by step. Although he came for hope, the coldness emitted from his body made many people terrified. They didn't dare to approach him at all. Behind him, There were also many experts of the Netherworld Kingdom. They were all subordinates of Ming Guang. Even in the Netherworld Kingdom there was also a power struggle. As a new lord of the Netherworld, Ming Guang needed to compete with other lords of the Netherworld for resources. He was also recruiting subordinates wantonly. Among his followers, not all of them were dead, and not all of them had died once. Many of them were experts of the present age, and their bodies were full of vitality. This was a sign that they were still alive, and not those who were dead. At this time, these people surrounded Yi Shiwen. Obviously, they wanted to kill him here. Why? You want to kill me? Yi Shiwen said with a cold smile. He finally spoke. It seemed that he had finally broken free from the ocean of his great path. In other words, the dangerous aura forced him to break free from his immersion in the great path. Yi Shiwen, you have killed so many experts of the Netherworld Kingdom. Even Ming Di personally gave the order to kill you. What else do you have to say? Ming Guang looked at Yi Shiwen coldly. There was a bit of dissatisfaction in his eyes. Since his debut, he had been recognized as one of the top experts of the younger generation. His peers were the lord of the ancient heavenly court, the descendant of the demon master Kuanping, and many peerless disciples of the emperor's lineage. He felt disdain in his heart. As long as he grew up, he would be able to kill all the experts. But the person in front of him was different. No one even compared him to him. That was more humiliating than anything else. Now, this person was in front of him. Not only did he have to complete the task that Ming Di had requested, but he also had to prove in front of the heavens that there was no one that he, Ming Guang, could not compare to. Only others could not compare to him. Ming Di is just a person who hides his head and shows his tail, Yi Shiwen said coldly. A mouse hiding in the shadows. What? You are courting death? Even if the Emperor comes, he can't save you. These experts of the Netherworld Kingdom were furious. Yi Shiwen dared to insult the supreme existence in their hearts. He was simply courting death. In their opinion, Yi Shiwen was going crazy before his death. He clearly knew that he could not avoid it. He was going to die today. He might as well just talk and forget about it. Are you trying to provoke me? Ming Guang's face was also extremely ugly. Provoke you? Is there a need for that? Ming Guang, although I don't know what kind of person you were in your previous life, I think you should be an extraordinary person. Now, you are willing to be Ming Di's dog and be ordered around by him. You are really a disgrace to your previous life. Some people say that you are the reincarnation of the Emperor, but I don't believe it. The Emperor is so proud. How can he tolerate his body to be a dog? Yi Shiwen said faintly. His words made many people's eyelids twitch. Not only did he completely look down on Ming Guang, but he also looked down on Ming Di, who was behind him. The veins on Ming Guang's face twitched. Being a dog. This was the last thing he wanted to hear. This was a slap in the face. Moreover, the person who said this was Yi Shiwen. This made him even more furious. Do you think this is interesting? You want me to be ruthless after provoking me so that you can die faster? Said Ming Guang coldly at this time. He thought of another possibility. If this was the case, then everything made sense. Yi Shiwen had come here with such a purpose in mind. Yi Shiwen sneered slightly. Do you think it is necessary? I am Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back and said faintly. His words sounded ordinary and calm, but when they landed in the hearts of the crowd, it was like a bolt of lightning had struck them, causing them to completely recall what had happened. Yes, the man in front of them was not an ordinary character. He was Yi Shiwen. If it was thousands of years ago, this name was nothing at all. But now, this name had endless deterrence and endless magic. That's right, just these 3 words were enough. He was Yi Shiwen. Did he need to provoke the enemy to die faster? Only his enemies would beg for mercy like this. They were begging for death. Nonsense, I think you have a guilty conscience, said Ming Guang while gritting his teeth. From the moment they met, Yi Shiwen completely suppressed him. He did not have the upper hand on the battlefield at all. He completely lost in the confrontation of auras. Yi Shiwen did not think highly of him from the beginning. They were obviously of the same generation, but the way he looked at him, he actually regarded him as a junior. Considering the age of the previous generation, he was way ahead of Yi Shiwen. Guilty? Do I need to? I am Yi Shiwen, said Yi Shiwen faintly. Are you planning to attack together? Or one by one? Yi Shiwen continued to ask, but he did not look at them directly. It was as if he was looking at a group of trash. You are courting death? Ming Guang roared. Ming Guang, you are courting death. How dare you attack my big brother? A roar rang out from afar. A golden figure shot through the sky and landed before everyone like a huge star. He gave off an extremely powerful aura. This person was none other than the young Kuan Ping, whom they had not seen for a long time. Not bad. Yi Shiwen looked at the young Kuan Ping, and could not help but smile. In his heart, the young Kuan Ping was undoubtedly like a younger brother. He had raised him since he was young. Their relationship was completely different. At this moment, the young Kuan Ping's figure was tall and straight, like a huge spear, soaring into the sky. Although he still looked like a young man, his expression was less immature and more mature compared to many years ago when he was in closed-door training. Many years ago, the young Kuan Ping left Yi Shiwen and went to the ancient heavenly court to receive the inheritance of the demon master. Now it seemed that the effect was not bad. Compared to Ming Guang, his strength was not any weaker. He was strong enough to compete with this peerless master of the Nether Kingdom. This meant that Yi Wudi was right. The young Kuan Ping had a great encounter and great benefit. Kuan Ping. Ming Guang looked at the young Kuan Ping with a vigilant look in his eyes. Unlike Yi Shiwen, this was a true opponent at his peak. Chapter 29:10. Big brother, I'll talk to you after I get rid of this guy, young Kuan Ping said. He had not seen Yi Shiwen since his retreat. Although he had come out in the past few decades, Yi Shiwen seemed to be in a state of retreat, so he did not disturb him. Originally, Yi Shiwen had the protection of the Dao tool. Even if some rascal came to cause trouble, they could not stop the power of the Dao tool. However, he became anxious when he heard that Yi Shiwen's Dao tool had dispersed and flown back to the Secret Alliance. Sure enough, it was just as he had thought. Once Yi Shiwen revealed any signs of fatigue, there would definitely be some thieves who would try to take advantage of him. He did not expect that Ming Guang would also come. This super genius who was on par with him, but he did not know what grudges his big brother had with the underworld. There were many records of the underworld ancient heavenly court, but they were not good. The word bold was enough to explain everything. Get rid of me? Ming Guang's expression suddenly changed, becoming even more unsightly. What was wrong with this world? Yi Shiwen looked down on him, but now even this Kuan Ping dared to speak to him like this. Was he a cabbage on the roadside? It was a great humiliation to be sent away so easily. Of course, there is no need for my big brother to suppress you. I alone am enough to beat you up, young Kuan Ping said matter-of-factly. On his body, a diagram of the yin-yang fish flew out. In an instant, the world seemed to transform into yin and yang. Yin-yang diagram. Some experts of the celestial race were almost forced to their knees by this diagram. This is the protective Dao tool of the demon master Kuan Ping? Yes, as expected, he really obtained the inheritance of the demon master Kuan Ping. The yin-yang diagram was famous in the world, but after the demon master Kuan Ping fell, this diagram disappeared. Someone exclaimed. He was an old monster who had lived to this day. He was knowledgeable and had seen the power of the yin-yang diagram. Young Kuan Ping obviously knew that Ming Guang was not simple. He was definitely not someone that ordinary people could compare with, so he did not hold back. As soon as he came up, he activated the yin-yang diagram to completely suppress him. Yu Kuan Peng! Ming Guang roared, and suddenly the sky exploded. The mountains in the distance collapsed, and the earth shattered. It was like bombs exploding one after another. What about me? I can suppress someone like you with one hand, young Kuan Peng said coldly. He was also unruly. In fact, he was even more arrogant than Ming Guang. Ming Guang had his pride, but so did Kuan Peng. He was the descendant of the Kuan Peng. He was the descendant of the demon master. Ming Guang stared at the young Kuan Peng coldly. He was a little afraid, but it was only limited to the yin-yang two realms diagram. Although he could see that Yi Shiwen's control of the yin-yang two realms diagram was still quite shallow, and he could not control it as easily as Yi Shiwen could. However, Yi Shiwen still had an advantage against him, who did not have a Taoist tool. Yi Shiwen, are you going to hide behind people? Ming Guang looked at Yi Shiwen, trying to find a way to break through. You? Cao. Kuan. Yi and to Xian. Ming Kuan Chen, he Ming. Ming Guang blushed, which was rare. Then, his face turned cold. But since you have come to look for me, then you don't need to do anything. I alone am enough. Some people think that I have declined and are easy to bully. Now, I will let them see whether I have really declined to this point or not. Yu Shiwen said in an ice-cold voice. That's right. That's good. I will eliminate you first. Ming Guang said coldly. He looked at Kuan Peng. He was not afraid. He just did not want Kuan Peng to intervene at this time. Otherwise, his mission would fail. Now that Yi Shiwen took the initiative to challenge him, it was great. He was confident that he could eliminate Yi Shiwen in a short time. Kuan Peng would not be able to react. Buzz! In that instant, Ming Guang made his move. That terrifying power erupted in an instant. Blood qi soared into the sky like a vast ocean. As soon as he took a step forward, he felt the earth shattering. The mountains in the distance were trembling as if they were about to collapse. No one expected him to be so powerful. An ordinary peak quasi-emperor might not be able to match up to such power. Ming Guang was worried that young Kuan Peng would not attack. But after seeing that young Kuan Peng just looked at him coldly without any expression, he was relieved. However, he did not know that young Kuan Peng was very confident in Yi Shiwen. But even so, he did not seem to move. In fact, his whole body was completely tense. Once there was a slight change, he would immediately attack. This attack directly bombarded Yi Shiwen. It didn't even take a moment. It had already happened in an instant, and Yi Shiwen also attacked in an instant. Although he did not have any spiritual power, the blood in his body was like an explosion. It instantly exploded, and his blood qi bloomed like a divine cloud. Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch without any fist intention. It was just a simple punch. Boom! Yi Shiwen's fist was like a big spear that directly bombarded Ming Guang's offensive. A series of astonishing collisions occurred. Then, Ming Guang's overwhelming offensive came to a standstill for a moment. Then, it exploded with a loud bang. In the blink of an eye, it vanished into thin air and was completely destroyed. How is this possible? Ming Guang's eyes widened. His attack had actually been broken into thin air. Yi Shiwen did not use any spiritual power or magical power in this move. He had only relied on his own tyrannical strength to achieve this. How could he not be shocked? However, Yi Shiwen's attack was far from stopping. On the contrary, his attack had just begun. He took another step forward and caught up. Suddenly, the mountains and rivers shook. The sun and the moon changed color. Heaven and earth trembled under his amazing blood qi. It rushed into the sky. Everyone was terrified and their faces changed. Did Yi Shiwen not cut off his cultivation at all? Or was his physical body really so terrifying? The strength of his physical body was simply heaven-defying. It made people tremble in fear even from afar. Go to hell! Ming Guang was enraged when he saw Yi Shiwen advancing instead of retreating. A kingdom of death instantly appeared around him. He integrated himself into this kingdom of death in an attempt to stop Yi Shiwen's attack. Yi Shiwen's punch blasted into the kingdom of death. It was like a clay ox falling into the sea. You're courting death. Ming Guang was overjoyed when he saw this. He instantly slammed his palm toward Yi Shiwen like lightning. Yi Shiwen raised his hand and blocked this fatal blow from Ming Guang. Boom! There was another loud noise. Heaven and earth trembled. No one could have imagined that the battle between the two would actually break out like this. In particular, the battle between the two was so strange. Yi Shiwen simply used his physical body to enter and exit. His blood qi soared into the sky. On the other hand, Ming Guang's various magical power laws erupted. It was like an ancient emperor had been resurrected, constantly attacking Yi Shiwen. But even so, he still had no way to take down Yi Shiwen. He just kept bombarding Yi Shiwen. However, his attack was resolved by Yi Shiwen. With just a simple move, Yi Shiwen had resolved Ming Guang's attack. Besides Young Kuan-pring, there was no one else who dared to stand near them. The yin-yang two boundaries diagram above his head was constantly bobbing up and down. All the energy that rushed over was completely annihilated. It could not hurt Young Kuan-pring. Moreover, his own cultivation was extremely powerful. Even if he resisted, the aftermath of such a battle could not hurt him. This Yi Shiwen can actually resist Ming Guang with just his physical body. It's incredible! Someone watched from afar, only to feel his whole body trembling. It was completely unbelievable. Originally, everyone's impression of Yi Shiwen was that he was powerful, especially with the Dao tool incarnation, which was even more powerful. But in everyone's opinion, without the Dao tool, his strength was probably just that. Not to mention, he had severed his cultivation. Perhaps even an ordinary quasi-emperor could kill him here. It was also because of this that many people came to besiege him. But at this time, they realized that even if Yi Shiwen had nothing, he was still strong enough to fight against a peak quasi-emperor. No wonder his cultivation is obviously not there yet, but his strength is so tyrannical, someone exclaimed. Even the great freedom heaven fell at his hand. If he did not sever his cultivation, how strong would he be now? I can't believe it. Kill him. He is already so powerful now. If we let him sever his wrong cultivation and reconstruct his own great way, who can kill him in the future? Someone shouted, seeing the key problem. Many people were startled in their hearts. It didn't matter how powerful Yi Shiwen was right now. However, it was undeniable that he was at his weakest. If they missed this opportunity, they wouldn't get a better opportunity to kill this terrifying man. This man had already deterred an entire generation of the world. He had even forced everyone to exclude him from the ranking of the younger generation. Were they going to watch him continue to grow? Seeing that many people were beginning to get restless, Young Kuan-pring roared, "I'll see who dares. Are you all looking to die?" As he roared, the wind and clouds stirred. It actually stabilized the space, not being affected by the battle between the two. The amazing power that he displayed with his casual attack also made many people tremble. Many people looked at Young Kuan-pring with some fear in their eyes. Not only did Yi Shiwen have such a powerful enemy, but he also had extremely powerful helpers. In particular, the yin-yang two worlds diagram was even more terrifying. Don't stop them. Let them come together. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.